Welcome to our council meeting. I'd like to open it and acknowledge that we have all elected members present except Councillor Coates at this stage. I think he's around, just to remind everyone that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the community. Please allow me to acknowledge you before you speak so that people who are watching the meeting can understand who is making the intervention. And I just ask everyone if they wouldn't mind turning their mobile phones to silent or off, ideally, as well. And there are no leave of absences. And as I said, Councillor Coates, I think, is here. He's not an apology. So I'd like to start by acknowledging country and just in recognition of the deep history and culture of this place, acknowledge the traditional owners of this land on which we are meeting tonight, and acknowledge the determination and resilience of the Palawa community, and acknowledge all of the work that they are doing to maintain and promote their identity, culture and rights. The first item on the agenda is the confirmation of the minutes of our last meeting, which was on the 19th of August. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Harvey. Councillor Elliott?
Yeah, I just had a correction, please, to item 13. My deferral was that it goes to next Monday's workshop and back to Council in September. That was my motion.
I might just need to take some advice on that from the CEO.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So, Councillor Elliott actually raised this with me, and I did have cause to review the footage of the meeting. Certainly my interpretation was that was the way that the motion was framed initially. I think you then invited Councillor Elliott to outline the reasons for the deferral, but you then took the council decision as a procedural motion under the Act. And so that was the way it was minuted, because it was certainly taken as procedural, and acknowledging that you certainly did indicate that was your intent, but it certainly wasn't the motion that it was a procedural motion to defer that was what actually was considered by the council.
Okay, so
So what happens from here?
I think
just amend the minutes.
What was that? No, I think there's a different view of what the motion was. So, from the officers, if you'd like to move that as a motion to change the minutes, and we'll see.
Yeah, well, that was clearly what I said. They were the words that came out of my mouth.
No, it's not.
Well, maybe we just note it, because the words that came out of my mouth were very clear what my motion was, my deferral was.
Okay, so that's been noted, I think, by the CEO. All those in favour with the minutes say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour with the minutes say aye.
I am showing in favour Councillor Dutta, Councillor Passelt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Harvey, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly. So they're carried.
Okay. We'll move on now to the transfer of agenda items. If there are any items that people want to transfer from on the open agenda. There being none, we'll move on now to communication from the Chair. I only have a fairly small procedural one to mention. There'd been a suggestion at the last meeting that when elected members under the local government meeting procedures are allowed to speak for 5 minutes, and our convention has been that you all get a 30-second warning on your 5 minutes, so that you can wrap up your points or ask for an extension of time. So there was a suggestion that rather than me saying 30 seconds, that there could be a bell rung at the 30 seconds. So I'm beastly careless about whether that's a better option or not, but we can try it for this meeting and then we can see whether that works for people or not. So you'll hear a bell now.
No.
Okay, so we'll move on now to item 5, which is notification of council workshops. So there have been 2 workshops on the 26th of August 2024. There was a workshop that covered quite a lot of things: biodiversity action plan review, Collins Street bikeway, climate change strategy update, state planning policies around medium density guidelines and improving residential standards. Then on the 9th of September there was another workshop which covered business events Tasmania, Taste of Summer, grant review, BME scooters and the governance structure. So they were the 2 workshops we've had since the last meeting. Item 6 is public question time. I'll just see if, first of all, we've had any notice of any questions.
Not on notice, no.
No? Okay. We do have an opportunity for people to ask questions from the floor, and I think there is someone here to ask some questions. Would anyone like to ask any questions?
I'd like to address the council in relation to...
Sorry, if you could come forward to the microphone. Now, it does need to be a question, so you can have a little bit of a preamble. I think it's under our rules. It's 30 seconds preamble, and then ask your questions.
I guess I need to be advised of the protocol, but I do have some questions in relation to the cycleway and the information that is being presented tonight that I would like some clarification. I'd just like to address the matters raised in the councillor's report.
Please proceed.
So can I do that now, or will I do it when you raise the matter?
No, now's the time to do public question time. Now, I think under our procedures, I might need to be. This might need to just be clarified by our governance team. Just, I think you can ask up to 3 questions per individual, if that's correct. Yeah. So just 3 questions,
Thank you.
And as I said, a little
you,
preamble before is okay, but so long as you get to the questions.
Thank you. If you bear with me, I'm representing 4 building owners and 4 or 5 tenancies in relation to Collins Street cycleway. And just as an initial statement, we are generally not opposed to the cycleway. We believe there's a compromise solution that would be addressed by adequate sitting down and talking with each other. And I just want to remind everyone that the businesses provide a substantial rate income to the council. The council has a reciprocal obligation to maintain the integrity of access and facilitation to those businesses, and the council does not have the right to arbitrarily terminate access to those businesses. A couple of little points that I'd like to address. On reading the reports that have come out from you, Lord Mayor, and the council officers themselves, you have addressed the matter head-on in relation to business loading zones, and you have stated that no loading zones will be removed, and every facilitation will be made to maintain the loading zones. That's correct, isn't it? You've said that in a public document?
I think I'll take that one on notice, if I could.
Well, it's in a public
if I could take that on notice, thank you.
I'm advising that you have said it. The council officer's response is that loading bays have priority over parking bays and they'll facilitate it.
Okay.
The support for that is...
Sorry, Mr Edwards. It is Mr Edwards, isn't it?
Big pardon?
You didn't introduce yourself before you started. It is Mr Edwards, is
yes,
it?
Correct.
Yeah. Mr Edwards, we do have some rules around questions and we can't have debate. So you've asked me that question. I've taken that one on notice. If you could now ask your second and third question and we'll see whether we can answer those. But there can't be back and forth debate around my taking that on notice.
I understand. Okay? I respect that.
So now if you could ask the second question and the third question, please.
Given that your statement in relation to protecting all loading zones in that strip of Collins Street, and given the officer's statements, why is it that the WLS report about the design of the cycleway has eliminated all those loading zones? There is a conflict between your statement, the council officer's statement, and the plans that are proposed to be endorsed and voted on tonight.
So you're seeking clarification on the loading zone question? I'll just see what the CEO or his delegated officer would like to
I'm sorry, I'm a little bit hard of hearing. I'm not picking up your voice very well.
I'll just see if the CEO would like to answer that or take that on notice. Around loading zones, just the status around the loading zones.
I think we can answer that, can't we?
And
Yep.
so just to be brief, so as discussed previously,
Can I ask that you come up to a microphone? Yeah, because otherwise it won't be picked up by the recording.
apologies. Thank you. So just with regards to the specific question around loading zones, so there has been some moving of loading zones, but the retention of loading zones has been, so loading zones have been retained. So yes, there are some that have been moved and not in the same location, but they have been retained, and they're certainly retained as a priority curbside.
Vidal.
Thanks,
And
that's kind
third
of helped a
question,
bit.
Mr Edwards.
But the number of loading zones, to clarify the answer, has been retained. If you look down Collins Street from Victoria, from Harrington to Collins Street, there's an elimination on the plans proposed to be debated on tonight of 8 loading zones, 8 number loading zones, and a reinstatement of one near Murray Street on the RACV side, which is completely away from the intense use of loading zones that are now needed to support the businesses and to reinforce the
I've got the
council's
question,
obligation
Mr.
to
Edwards. Yeah.
assist things.
Okay, so can you just clarify again, Mr Vidal, on the question of that there have been the elimination of some loading zones?
Yes.
For all loading zones?
Yeah,
or,
thank you.
Or not?
Sorry, apologies. With regards to the specific question, the one being noted, which is in the block between Victoria and Murray, has been moved, and we've extended, so that was 8 metres of space, we've extended and enlarged the loading zone on the other side of the road, which will provide for, I guess, access for those. In addition to, on Victoria Street, so just around the corner, we've changed the time and hours of operation, or proposing to change the time and hours of operation of that loading zone to help mitigate the loss of the other loading zone.
So you have lost some.
So, Mr Edwards, that's been answered. And you've asked your 3 questions. So, if you wouldn't mind taking your seat, thank you. And there'll be more. I'm sure there'll be more information provided during the debate. I think I saw that there's also a public question from Mr Merridew. Mr Merridew, would you like to come forward and ask your questions?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I've listened to the prompting. Only questions. My question is, we read in the press about 2 weeks ago, I hope this microphone is working because the sound at the back is generally very poor, of the Plan B launched by Alderman Posset. It made a lot of sense to clean up the avenues to get around the city from Mole Street across to North Hobart and West Hobart. My question is, why is Plan B not being applied to the Collins Street development that's before us tonight? My second question is that it is a well-known motor industry fact, and I have had 60 years in the motor industry, and I've watched environmental management of car engines over that period, and the industry has spent millions of dollars to try and clean up emissions at idle. If you cause more traffic to bottleneck in Collins Street and the intersections, the turning left intersection, turning left or turning right blocks the flow through traffic, you will increase the pollution. Now, in the report that came out from the COH to us on Monday evening, my question is, why was there no recognition of environmental pollution issues that shall be magnified by this development? My third question is that the Collins Street under a Plan B interpretation would be an excellent feeder to your 3 council car parks, an excellent feeder to traffic that wishes to go off Macquarie and use Harrington to the north, Argyle Street car parks, Argyle to the north, even to the Brooker Highway, to stay clear of Macquarie Street, which I understand from Councillor Possett's excellent recommendations is the path. So if those 3 questions could be taken on notice or answered, I would appreciate those matters. Thank you.
I think the CEO has suggested that they be taken on notice because they're a little bit more complex, Mr Merridew.
Thank you, but they are very relevant to that. Am I allowed a 4th question?
Nope.
No shared bike paths on Collins Street. They're very wide footpaths. Thank you.
All right. Is there any other public questions from the floor? There being none, we will move on now to petitions. Are there any petitions? No petitions. Are there any, item 8 is consideration of supplementary items. I don't think we have any supplementary items in the open agenda.
No, we don't.
Item 9 is indications of pecuniary and conflicts of interest. Do any elected members wish to indicate an interest in any item?
Yes, I'll declare an interest on item 12.
Councillor Harvey's interest in item 12. Any others at all? There being none, we will move on to officer reports. And the first item is the 2040 Climate Ready Hobart Strategy. So would someone like to move this? Councillor Posselt, seconded by Councillor Sherlock. Any discussion on the recommendations? Any discussion? Councillor Sherlock, or Deputy Lord Mayor, sorry.
Thank you very much. I just want to start by saying thank you very much to the staff for all of their hard work on this. Of particular interest to me was the two final reports, and I just wanted to say, just in case people didn't get a chance to read it, but was the emission reductions pathways for Hobart and the recommendations which were on science and evidence-based greenhouse gas emissions and the reduction pathways for the City of Hobart and for the municipality on the whole, so the Hobart community. It was really interesting that the 5 aspects that were there, the other things that they actually talked about were the corporate emissions. So 9% of Hobart's community emissions comes from council's corporate emissions. The Hobart community, 57% of emissions derive from transport, with electricity and waste-related emissions in second and third places. And for the council, 91% of emissions arise from waste and landfill operations. It was a really interesting report in terms of how to set targets and the target areas. There's a plethora of targets there, but I'll just go through a few, which is community, corporate, fossil-free policy, community inventory, corporate inventory, climate-related disclosure standards, and it goes on from page 11. So if people may be interested to have a read of that. And the other report that I found quite interesting was the climate risk assessment, the first pass risk assessment, which identified 5 domains to identify and describe how climate impacts generate and exacerbate risks to Hobart. And it covered natural environment, built environment, economy, social and governance. And so I thought that that was a really great overview of what the report was looking at. And for me, what was really interesting was the 2-stage process, and it specifically sets out the methodology that was undertaken and goes through that. And at stage 1 at the moment, which is what's been assessed, the first pass assessment, and stage 2, which is going to be a detailed report later on. But I did just want to point out, and people can probably have a look at it on page 13 and 14 if they so please. But yeah, just the overview of what the first pass assessment means, because I was really delighted to read that. It gave me more information and knowledge around climate hazards that pose risks or threats to the City of Hobart, and obviously the potential consequences. So thank you so much to the staff for this thorough overview of the strategy and the recommendations that have been made. Thank you.
Doug, any further discussion? Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just wanted to speak quickly on this and make the point that the council organisation and the elected members are all community leaders in this space. We just need to continue showing strong leadership on this issue by continuing to take action instead of just waiting for everybody else to do the work, which unfortunately seems to be the fallback position of our state and federal governments. So I'm really happy to be welcoming the council's updated climate change response in this 2040 Climate Ready Hobart strategy, and I just wanted to thank the staff and all the ratepayers and citizens of Hobart who are involved in the process to this point. Thank you.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, I just have a question for the moment, Lord Mayor, whoever can answer it. It's on page 10, 2.5. It states, recognising the future is uncertain, the strategy provides principles and guidelines. Could someone please enlighten me on what that actually means, recognising the future is uncertain, if we're going to have a strategy?
Sorry, Alderman Zuko, can you just remind us which page you're looking at? Oh, which point? Is it 4 point what?
Page? Sorry, I apologise. No, it's page 10.
Different
Page 9,
pages.
2.5. Page 9.
I got the big font. I got the big font. 2.5.
This is in the key issues right at the front, which says
Yes,
that
that's correct,
recognising
yeah.
the future is uncertain. The strategy provides principles and guidelines for decision making.
Yeah, I'm just like a little bit of an elaboration on recognising the future is uncertain. What's been meant there?
I'll ask the CEO if you want to respond to that or delegate that.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So my take on that, Alderman, would be it's relating to obviously the science. It is evolving in terms of the understanding that we have of matters pertaining to climate change and surroundings. So I think it's really alluding to that that obviously it evolves as understanding improves.
Further discussion. Any further discussion? Councillor Elliott?
Thank you. While I agree there's a lot the councils can do in this space, I do feel that I have actually dropped the ball a bit on this document and how it was developed, because I might just ask some questions around cost, because I am concerned that the council has done this document in isolation, and we are one of 29 councils. And on page 53, it refers to the council intending to work with other cities and share knowledge. And I'm a bit concerned as to why we didn't take that approach with the development of this strategy in the first place, given we obviously don't have invisible walls around our climate just across Hobart LGA. And I just wanted to get make sure I've understood things correctly in terms of costs. Can I just ask the officers, please? So the cost for the research, the risk assessment and engagement and the climate assembly, can I get a total for what that was, and then also confirm that it's another $120,000 for implementation? So around costs, please.
I'll just ask the CEO if he wants to respond to that or refer it to one of his staff.
I might refer that one, Lord Mayor.
Who would like to respond to that?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So the three reports that you're referring to, so it's $49,000 for the emissions reduction pathway report. For the climate risk assessment, it was $79,000, and for the deliberative community engagement, that was also $79,000.
And the 120 still was the current situation for implementation?
Correct. That's in the current budget for this year.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So that's nearly $340,000, which isn't, I think we'll all agree, is an insignificant amount of money. And like I said, I feel that I've dropped the ball a bit and should have pushed harder several months ago when this process started, because I don't think there's really any valid reason why a lot of this work couldn't have been done from a multi-council perspective, at least from the southern region, working with the Clarence, Kingborough, Glenorchy. Because, yeah, imagine 29 times 300,000, that's a big saving we could have made. I also have another question around the strategy refers to 240 climate leaders co-designed this strategy. I was really quite surprised. Can I just get some more insight into how the 240 climate leaders, can you tell me more about that, please?
Ms Robbins?
Thank you very much, Councillor Elliott. So just to respond to the term climate leaders is really an umbrella term that we're using it's a really self-identifying definition, which is around those people, in this specific instance, it's any of the businesses, individuals, stakeholders like government, etc., that actually participated in co-design workshops to inform the climate strategy, and also includes the Climate Assembly.
Okay. So it's interesting self-identifications come into this space too. So 240 people contributed to the strategy. Is that a translation? Yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I've just got a question around the Climate Assembly. How many people flew to participate in the Climate Assembly, and how many people drove by car?
Do you know that, Ms Robbins? It might need to be taken on notice, I think. I'm not sure.
I can respond to the first part. Okay. So for the Climate Assembly, one consultant flew down to support the Climate Assembly being undertaken, as is deliberative processes, you require independent facilitation. And then in terms of the numbers of people that drove, I would have to take that as a question on notice.
Thank you. I guess everyone can see the point I'm getting at is there's a bit worrying around the sort of the irony of, flying for climate and driving for climate, because the event was up at Mount Nelson. It's highly likely that at least half of people drove up there. I'm sure it was a lovely event and people felt great, good photo opportunities and things like that. But to be honest, the 10 recommendations that came out of that 4-day event that we paid people to attend, I think that officers and other experts really could have developed those. I don't think there was anything earth-shattering. And while it's great to involve the community, I also have a question. Are we not going out for public consultation now? Has the Climate Assembly replaced broader public consultation on this document?
Question to the CEO or Mr McIver or Mr Adams. I think a lot of this is in the engagement report, has been set out in quite a lot of detail.
I guess I'd just refer to the engagement report. So the Climate Assembly is one component of the engagement, not the entirety of the engagement.
Yeah, but we won't be going to public?
There was, I think, a consultation process, wasn't it?
Nothing on this final document?
That's correct, not on the draft final.
I also found it was very helpful, though, on page 8, the list of sort of background, I guess, to where the councillor's been to get to you and the different initiatives and things like that. It's the 2017 one caught my eye. The council resolves to divest from financial institutions who support the fossil fuel industry. I was just wondering, we still have that position in place?
Through the CEO, I think we do, but the CEO can confirm or...
Yep, we do.
Okay. Well, so I might just take a closer look into that offline, because I thought we banked with Westpac, and Westpac have here $9.8 billion loaned to fossil fuels globally. So I'm not sure if those things are aligning at the moment. There's also a bit of an overlay in the whole strategy around how fantastically environmentally friendly e-scooters are. And I'm just going to take offline as well, because I have some concerns around a bit of a confirmation bias being at play there, because e-scooters are potentially not as environmentally as some people lead us to believe, especially around the manufacturing of them, which we need. The steel requires coal to produce, the mining of the batteries, the shipping to send them here, the diesel vans that have to drive them around for charging, the lifespan, which they have of only 2 years typically, and the recycling of them. And also the fact that the council's own February 2023 survey showed that 62% of users who use the scooters would have otherwise walked, and 64% of users use them for fun. There's some good things in the strategy, like increasing density and spaces for people in climate extreme environments, and particularly pleased to see business continuity being thought of. And I think it's really important that the references are in the document, so that's great to have there. But there's some other statements in there which really make me nervous, and things that I worry could be taken to extremes and will have actions come before the council, and this document will be used. No, look, you must approve this tonight because you signed off on the climate strategy. It's right here. Like, for example, the statements around ceasing the purchase of fossil fuel assets, prioritising low and no emissions, and statements around transitioning to zero emissions can lower operational costs. There's some statements made, but I'm really not sure that the appropriate qualifiers are there, because from my perspective, we need to make sure that we are looking at this from a really objective and realistic perspective, because yes, we need to do our part when it comes to climate, but we also need to do it without destroying our economy, our way of life, making sure that ratepayers are getting excellent value for their money, and also respecting individual liberty. Just a small thing as well, I think the document needs a bit more proofreading, because I picked up some typos and mismatching dates. And we also need to be careful around statements, for example, making sure we say that many young people believe, rather than young people believe, as if it's a known thing that everyone thinks and believes the same way. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Kitsos.
Look, for me, this is a really important piece of work, and any financial investment that went into producing this document is well spent, in my opinion. It is with great pride that I support this Climate Ready Hobart strategy. I think it's a bold and forward-thinking framework that reinforces our city's leadership on one of the most pressing challenges of our time. The strategy, encapsulated in the initiative Mobilise Hobart, is a vision of hope and action. It not only acknowledges the critical role that local governments have, but also places the people of Hobart, our households, our businesses and our community organisations at the heart of climate leadership. This strategy not only is about targets and numbers, it's also about collaboration, empowerment and shared responsibility. As we chart our path to a sustainable future, Mobilise Hobart reminds us that we are all climate leaders and the action we take today will shape the future of the next generations to come. I'd like to spend a few moments drawing attention to the goals that really stood out to me in this document. So goal 1 is zero emissions for Hobart, which I think is an ambitious and achievable goal. A 70% reduction in emissions by 2030 on the road to zero emissions by 2040 sends the clear message: Hobart is committed to leading the way in creating a cleaner, greener future. The focus on zero emissions in transport, building, waste and the operations of the city itself lays out a clear roadmap for change. With each step we take, whether it be fostering the shift to electric vehicles, improving energy efficiency in our homes and workplaces, or reducing waste, we move closer to a city that respects and protects its natural environment. Goal 2, building climate resilience. This is vital. This is something that we all need to focus on, because as we face more extreme weather events and the unpredictability of changing climate, it's crucial that Hobart not only reduces emissions but becomes resilient to the impact of these changes as a community. We must ensure that our city is a place where both people and nature can thrive. This will not only make us climate ready for the future but foster community connections and prepare for disaster. It speaks to our commitment to the safety and security of our residents. And finally, goal 3, leading as a capital city. This strategy elevates Hobart as a beacon for climate leadership, not only for Tasmania and for all the other councils in our state, but for Australia. Our governance must be strong and our workplace climate ready and our advocacy impactful. This strategy sets a clear path for us as local leaders to drive change in partnership with the community. But for me, it's not only about good governance, it's also a call to action. As I said, it invites every business, every individual, every organisation to step up and make a difference. The 4 directions of Mobilise Hobart: to be informed, to build capacity, to amplify our climate leaders and to foster collaboration, speak truly to me. As we adopt this strategy, we commit to a future where Hobart thrives in harmony with the environment. We commit to a future that we can be proud of, that will see our children inherit a city that is sustainable, resilient and a proud leader in climate action. Thank you.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Thank you, Lord Mayor. The City of Hobart has declared a climate and biodiversity emergency. To really gauge where we're going, we need hard evidence. And two of my big concerns are the tree canopy, and according to the latest documents I can see relating to the state of the canopy of trees in Hobart urban areas, the satellite imagery is actually showing it's decreasing. I find that extremely concerning. We also know that, as it's been discussed in previous workshops, that our waste level with the Hobart residents and businesses is actually on the increase as well. As far as CO2 emissions go from vehicles in the Hobart area and from our vehicles, I couldn't really ascertain get any real knowledge on that, but I would assume they could also be on the increase. But what I'd like to see is a dashboard, this being such a critical part of this council's agenda, even on a monthly basis at the future council meetings, exactly how we're going with those key performance indicators on those two lists. There may be some other easy obtained data that we can reference against. We can have all these reports we want, which are good, and we could talk about them, but it's like a bank account. Unless we look at our balance, we have no real idea. We might have a feeling, and quite often that can be wrong. And I'd like to make, not that I want this to go to the vote, but I'd like to be noted that consideration be given to future meetings, perhaps the monthly ones or bi-monthly, with an updated report on where we stand with wastage. That is obtainable from our data at the Macrobius Gully. And hopefully the satellite imagery one on the tree canopy could be one as well, and any other things. So if that could be noted, perhaps there's a ready reference for us to be able to reflect on, and it might jolt us into gear a little bit more and remind us of the emergency that we all acknowledge. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I do endorse the points made by previous speakers, and I also want to acknowledge some of the points that Councillor Elliott has made. There are lots of information in the report, and there are some very succinct specifics mentioned there as well, and I won't repeat it because people have already mentioned. But coming from the Pacific island of Fiji, I just want to make three very simple points. Point number one, climate change is a fact. Evidence supports this substantially. A number of years ago, when it first began, there were those who doubted this. Those who laughed and mocked, saying that this was just pie in the sky. But since then, we have enough hardcore evidence that there is climate change. So we are in a defining moment of history where we as leaders and local leaders will have to make a decision, and we have. Now, the impact of climate change has impacted on Fiji. I've just been there a few weeks ago, and in an island where it's suffering because they are losing their plantation of cassava, dalo, etc. Tuvalu, in not long distant future, will be accommodated by Australia because of the high rise. And if you look at these evidence before us, climate change is a reality. Point number two that I want to make is this: climate change ready. And I want to compliment the Hobart City councillors who in 2010 began this journey. It was a fantastic foresight. They displayed leadership and took us through this since 2010. And I want to also acknowledge, because I do look up to Councillor Harvey and his contributions in this particular area. So I want to commend and compliment him for this. So we are climate change ready, and the Hobart City Council, I say congratulations and thank you for those leaders, including Alderman Marty Zuko, who was here since 2010 to put this in action. And point number three that I want to make is this: that climate change action plan that we have, for me, it's practical and it's achievable. It's inspirational, it's aspirational. But in fact, if we don't do things, then we will suffer in the future. So with those comments, I want to say thank you for the report, and I'm sure we as a community, as individual leaders, as families, as communities, and corporate leaders, we will do our bit to make sure that we are combating this particular issue that we have, climate change and its impact on us. Thank you.
Further discussion? Alderman Bloomfield.
It's interesting. I actually participated in some of those workshops. I didn't realise that made me a leader in this area at all, but I was very grateful to have participated in the fact that it was wide-ranging in the fact that we discussed how does Hobart deal with bushfires, how does Hobart deal with flooding, temperature changes and everything else that we perceive as a possibility in our not-so-distant future. I've always been of the frame of mind that given Australia can only affect, 0.3, whatever it is, % of the world climate change as any point of influence, what we can influence is how we handle things. And this report did that. And I was grateful for that because that is ultimately what we need. It's not whether or not we can change what happens, but that we can lead our community to meet those changes safely and bring everybody with us. And those are the things that are on the table in those discussions. A lot of them haven't necessarily appeared through this because those are parts of the working papers, I guess. But it was admitting that people could easily be left behind when things go badly wrong. And to pick up and acknowledge that was very important to me. So I was very grateful for that. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councillor Harvey.
Lord Mayor, a number of years ago at one of the local government association meetings, we had a professor come and give a presentation, and I attended his workshops during that meeting. And one of his studies or the interests he had was in heat waves and mortality during heat waves. And he had this amazing map that he put up on the screen, and he hit the button and all these little red dots appeared in the eastern suburb of Melbourne. And there was a handful of dots, and it's like these red dots, they represent all the people that died during a heat wave. And there was not a huge amount of dots. He then hit the button again and all these little red dots appeared in the western suburbs of Melbourne, and there were hundreds of dots. And those dots represented all the people that died in the western suburbs during a heat wave. And these are vulnerable people, the elderly, infirm. And the difference was stark. A handful of dots and hundreds of dots. And the hundreds of dots was because there was at the time very few trees in the western suburbs, and those suburbs suffered severely during heat waves. They were 5 degrees warmer than the leafy eastern suburbs, and that really stuck with me, you know, that we need to have lots of vegetation in order to cool areas. And that's something that I applaud the council with their tree canopy strategy to get to 40% tree canopy. But as Councillor Kelly said, we've lost 55 hectares of tree canopy from 2017 to 2022. 55 hectares is a significant amount of tree loss. We recovered we planted 0.2 hectares. But the difference, 55 hectares, is something we need to be really conscious of, and that can't be a trend that continues. So that's something we need to address as a council. So that's the tree strategy. How do we reinforce that strategy to make sure we don't continue to lose tree canopies? I was also looking at the Australian Local Government Association just today, and a report from 2021 found that more than 70% of responding councils to a survey are planning ambitious emissions reduction targets of 70%, and while 80% have set or are investigating emissions reduction targets across their entire community. Another report said that if all the local governments together, combined, met their targets, including Hobart, if we met emissions reduction targets, and we've already done most of that heavy lifting over the last decade or two, if local government could meet its emissions reduction targets, we would knock off 96% of the national target of 28% reductions by 2030. So every little council, all 537 councils across Australia, some smaller than us, all have a role to play in reducing their emissions and helping reach that national target of 28% reduction by 2030. So while Australia might not be the great global polluter, combined with lots of other countries, but as a country, we need to play our part, and councils need to play their part in the national targets of reducing emissions. And eventually it'll all get to zero net emissions as we increase technology, as we all come to play our parts as sectors. So I see local government as an important sector in reducing emissions and also looking at mitigation and adaptation into the future. We know that local government is at the forefront of recovery when things go wrong, when there are extreme weather events, and as we know, we see them all the time in Australia and all around the world. Flooding, droughts, heat waves, forest fires, but we also lose a lot of infrastructure, and that requires a lot of funding to recover as bridges wash away, as buildings burn down. Huge cost to local government to recover from these extreme weather events. That's across the whole country. Hobart's no different. We've had our extreme events. We will have more. We will have another fire that will wipe out houses across Hobart. Everyone's preparing for it as we speak. So mitigation and resilience are part of the things we need to do within local government. There's a lot to say about this report. I'll be supporting it tonight. A lot of good things in this report. We can always go even further, and that comes down to our way of thinking. And if we have a thought pattern that says, well, can we afford to do these things, or should we save the money, then we're in trouble. But climate literacy is one of the most important things that we all need, and we all could be climate champions if we all think about what we can do and how we should be moving forward. So that's an important component of this. Another point I'd like to pick up, which Councillor Elliott mentioned, was working as a sector. And I do agree, we should be working as a sector in Tasmania. 29 policies versus maybe 3.
Further discussion. Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, acutely aware of it raising, discussing this. It's just me adding emissions to a lowering emission document. But anyhow, I'll just very quickly, I wanted to sort of add a few thoughts to this and where my thinking is for the benefit of other members. I don't profess to being an expert in climate change policy. I'm very glad that we have experts among us, and when we do put together these strategies, we can sort of consult widely and put together a whole bunch of actions. I guess my concern in being asked to vote on it is the first thing I tend to look at is how is this being implemented, what are we asking to do, and if it does get in, how are we then going to monitor it and report against it and understand what's happening. And look, I guess I'd draw members' attention to, it's page 56 of the PDF where it talks about the strategy to action. And look, this is a 2040 document. It's a very aspirational one that talks about a whole bunch of actions and targets. But I guess what we're being asked to action tonight on that strategy to action is where it says the strategy will be complemented by 5-year action plans to be embedded into the City of Hobart's annual planning, budget and review cycles. And it sort of slots this document in. It's got community vision. I think we can all agree there's community vision. The capital C strategic plan, which is, as we know, the 10-year document. Then it's got the 2040 climate ready document, which is a 15-year one. Then the climate action plans, which is 5 years, and then the annual plans, which are 3 or 5 year. My I guess concern with this is it's relatively silent on how we then look at, is this working, is it not working? We're sort of committing to a 2040, which is very out there, but on its own document we've put it below our 10-year plan. And I guess I sort of have concerns. You could if we action this, there's a whole bunch of really good action items in there that I think would get broad support in the community. There's a few items in there that are a bit contentious, and there's some that I sort of think, are we going to get the benefit for buck? Overall, it's not the worst document, but I just note that we seem to be committing ourselves to a whole bunch of more 5-year action plans, rather than sort of going, okay, what happened for the last one, what worked, what didn't, and how do we improve and build up from that? We sort of seem to be coming from the 2040 end and working backwards, which is just my observation on the approach. And the second thing is, and this is sort of related to that, but and it might be a question through you, Lord Mayor, to the appropriate director, but this document talks about us recommitting to the island's 2030 network and grouping. We, as you know, Lord Mayor, you wrote to them 28th of August last year, committing Hobart to joining that network, and that forms an integral part of our advocacy piece under this strategy. But what reporting have we actually had back now that it's been more than a year from that group? Is it working? Is it not? What have we achieved? What haven't we? What process of reviewing, are we getting benefit? And I guess trying to understand where that sort of comes into it. So it's a specific question around the island, local 2030 Islands network that we as a council joined 28th of August last year.
Theo, did you want to take that on notice?
I'll have to take it on notice. Yeah. Thank you, and I look forward to the response. I guess I raise that as a specific example. We as an organisation put in place a lot of strategies, a lot of actions. and they're only as good as our follow-up on them. And it may well be there's been follow-up, and I'm not on the committee that deals specifically with this, but I guess a strategy is only as good as you have people constantly reviewing it and overseeing it and making sure that it's being actioned appropriately. And so, look, most of these items are fine, but the proof will be in the pudding. And my feedback would be that the document, unfortunately, is a little bit 2040 working back rather than outlining steps and ways that we can get there, and I guess from a governance point of view, highlighting what effective strategies to action, other than sort of creating more 5-year plans. But look, overall, there's a whole bunch of stuff in here that's sort of quite interesting, but it'll be all about the implementation and sort of how we action it and how we do it. And as I said, my feedback is when you're looking at items, it's more about how we're going to achieve this. What are the steps we're going to put in place? Who's going to oversee that? How are we going to be sure that the priorities match the resources of the city? And if we do sign up to things such as we did last year, what do we then do to make sure that we're actually progressing that? Thank you.
Further discussion? No. Yeah, I'll just say a few words. Just thanks for everyone's contributions. I think it's been really interesting, and I think the document and the work that's gone into it, I do want to acknowledge the significant amount of work that has gone into it, but it is a really important issue, and it's an issue that we do need to take incredibly seriously. And I just want to draw everyone's attention to 4.13 of the report, which outlines that climate change is a risk to local government, and that we received advice in 2021 from Minter Ellison about the financial and legal imperatives that underpin the need for all organisations, including councils, but even medium-sized organisations, to have an understanding of climate risk and to be able to demonstrate to stakeholders and communities that we are taking that risk seriously. And then further in our 2023 climate risk assessment, SGS Economics has noted that the possible liability risks that stem from a failure to mitigate, reduce emissions, adapt, reduce vulnerability or disclose climate risks. And further in that report, it mentions that the strategy anticipates alignment to emerging legislation, such as the Australian Government's mandatory climate-related financial disclosure. So what we can see is that there is a lot of uncertainty, a lot of change occurring, but it's all pointing in the same direction, that organisations like councils, like businesses, like companies of all shapes and sizes need to recognise that this is such a central issue. This is an issue that will impact the lives of our residents probably more than any other, and whether that be the impact of extreme weather on people's insurance premiums, on their own government's revenue and ability to actually spend on things because they're having to deal with extreme weather, on people's private property and also their lives and other injuries, the impact of accelerating melting Antarctic ice on sea level, impacting public infrastructure or private property, and shifts on how power is generated and how we transport ourselves, how federal or state or international trends or regulations impact on us as an organisation or as residents. So all of these are many things that where climate change is coming whether we like it or not, and we need to be ahead of these issues. And strategic organisations like Hobart City Council is one, gets ahead of these big issues and works out how we can either manage those risks or find new and innovative opportunities for the city. And there are both risks and opportunities, and I think the document really demonstrates that well. It's been a really excellent and thorough process covering all of those issues that we should be investigating. So the climate risk assessment, as I mentioned, we needed fresh advice on whether our inventory process were up to scratch, and that's really important as we get mandatory disclosure requirements from the federal government. We need to make sure that our own emissions are being reported and recorded in a way that's in line with international protocols. And we ran a really innovative climate assembly, and for those members of the community that are here tonight, I want to thank you again for your amazing work. Because it was an innovative approach to capturing a very representative sample, to bringing people along the journey with really good information so that we could inform our community and build those climate leaders within our community that we're going to need to actually see the kind of change that is embedded within this strategy. So I want to thank the Climate Assembly for their work and acknowledge that it was a really important part of the process. I was actually reminding myself of election commitments that a lot of us made, and a lot of us did make commitments to our community in the lead up to the 2022 election that climate change was an important issue and that's something that we would work on. And tonight is our opportunity to deliver on that commitment. It is the start of the strategy. Obviously, we have been doing many great things over a number of years, but this is a very professional document that pulls it all together and demonstrates to the community that we take their concerns seriously and that we're going to tackle this in a professional manner, and we're going to have a long-term view to really lead the community in this really important work. Thank you. Okay, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. No. Show of hands. All those in favour?
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Kelly. Councillor Elliott.
So that's carried. Thank you, everyone. We'll now move on to item 11, which is the Collins Street Tactical Bicycle Infrastructure Trial. Moved by Councillor Hobart, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. Just might be there's a few people moving around. Okay. All right, so we have a recommendation. That's been moved. Further discussion on this? Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. It is an absolute pleasure to stand here tonight. I'm thrilled that this is finally before us for a decision, and I look forward to my colleagues supporting what is a modern way of doing business in a city like Hobart. The tactical trial of protected bike lanes for 3 blocks of Collins Street between Mole Street and Murray Street means that we can decrease congestion in the city by facilitating more people who wish to ride and scoot in, particularly on their morning and afternoon commutes. Now, not only does it increase the number of people that are scooting and riding, it also increases the comfort level for those who are walking and increases the safety on footpaths, because we no longer have scooters and devices moving at higher speeds that could cause injury and dissuade people from walking into the city of a morning. I would like to reflect that we have a capital city that has the highest number of walking commuters in the country, with 28% of all morning commuters coming to work on foot, which is fantastic. So it's great that we support those people, and this is what this is all about. It's not just bike infrastructure, it is parklets where people can rest, take a weight off and enjoy the sun, maybe grab a coffee or a sandwich at a local business, and support the local economy and small businesses while they commute to work or home from work. Maybe people will stop and grab a takeaway Indian on the way home. These types of urban design interventions bring more people to these precincts. And that, again, that's what this is all about. Business is constantly asking us to do more to support them, and these transformative projects do indeed help those businesses and increase brand awareness, increase foot traffic, and thereby increase expenditure in those businesses immediately around where we are having a look at a Collins Street vision plan, and this is the first step to that. Now, the aims of the trial are to increase the number of riders. So we want to see more people riding to work. We want to see, importantly, more diversity in who is riding. So we want to see older people, we want to see younger people, and we want to see more children and women using this infrastructure. And evidence from elsewhere suggests that this type of AAA rated or all ages, all ability infrastructure does indeed do that. So we'll look in 2 years' time to see if we've succeeded. Other areas of analysis for us will be perceived safety for pedestrians as measured by people crossing mid-block. If you feel comfortable and safe, then you're quite happy to step out and cross the road mid-block and not rely on signalised intersections to assist you crossing. And we're also looking for feedback from people as well as car speeds more broadly. Now, it's not only about getting people to and from work, it's about economic boost, as I've spoken about, but it's also about connecting Kunyani to Timtumili Winanya, the mountain to the river. And it's really interesting when we go back as far as I don't think I took the date down, but the 1811, the Surveyor General's map in 1811 of the city of Hobart expressed the importance of the rivulet corridor to the community and connecting the mountain to the city, and that has been mirrored in the Hobart Rivulet Master Plan of 2011 as well. Now, there are a number of strategic documents that have backed this in since 2008. Now, that's almost, we're approaching 20 years now. And some of those, just to give some examples, include the Central Hobart Precincts Plan, the Hobart Transport Strategy of both 2018 and 2024, the Hobart City Council Principal Bike Network Plan of 2008, the Inner City Transport Networks Operations Plan, the Inner City Action Plan, the Greater Hobart Cycling Plan, and indeed it is drawn out from, I'll request 2 minutes extension, please, Lord Mayor.
Moved by Alderman Zerko, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
Thank you, colleagues. It is indeed drawn out from the STRELIS, the Southern Tasmania Regional Land Use Strategy, that talks to these types of interventions. It supports development, and we all know that we recently approved a large development at the Motus site on the top of Barrack Street and Macquarie Street. Those people are going to need to come into the city, and they will most likely use this corridor to do so because it's safe and it's comfortable. Now, the last thing I'd like to speak to before I take my seat is the element of safety and how many active transport incidents there are in our city. Now, I think that one active transport incident is one too many. And in the documents, if you care to read your agenda, you'll find a map of all of the active transport incidents that have occurred in Hobart in the last 5 years. This is pedestrians and cyclists. Now, it's quite alarming, actually, and I know I have attended at least one of these personally, so I have seen the effects of when cars hit pedestrians firsthand. We think that separated cycleways will keep cyclists safe, and it will keep people safe on the footpaths, and I don't think that there is anything more important than protection of human life from injury or death. So I would encourage elected members to consider that when making their determination tonight, noting that the report also expressed that on the intersection of Collins and Harrington Street in the last 5 years, there has been 2 cyclist-related injuries, one of which was serious, 5 pedestrian crashes with motor vehicles, one of which was serious, and Barrack and Collins was 1 cyclist and 2 pedestrians that have been hit by vehicles in the last 5 years. It's not good enough, and what we're doing here is protecting the people of our city. So I encourage you, for all of the reasons I've spoken about, to vote with your feet with this one. Let's all come to the table and support this, and I'd like to thank all of the members of the community who have come together to really sell why this is important to them, specifically referencing Anna Blake and Ben Clark for their hard work in gathering the community. I believe they're in the chamber tonight, as well as the South Hobart Sustainable Community and the Mobility Committee, which I chair quarterly. Thanks to everybody involved. Thanks to elected members for listening and the extra time, and I look forward to hearing your thoughts.
Further discussion? Further discussion? I can put Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So we all know that this will pass tonight, not unanimously, but it will. I just wanted to highlight that one of my biggest concerns from where we are at the moment is that in the report at 6.8.3, I think it is, 6.8.3, there's a dot point there, a list of 6 or 7 metrics that will be used. The following metrics will be used to measure, well, as part of the trial, I guess. But what's for me is missing here. It has things like numbers of bikes, diversity of users, people crossing mid-block, user confidence, feedback from local stakeholders. We have there the metrics, but there's no detail around how it will be measured, or even more importantly, the threshold for success. So is increasing the number of bike riders by 1%, is that a success? Does that mean that the concept will stay, or we're going for 50%? Is that a success? If we increase the number of women by 5%, is that a success? And so it continues on. There's no measurements around what success actually looks like. And I'm concerned that the absence of that is because this infrastructure will stay in place regardless of the figures. And given space is at such a premium, and we really do have an unspoken obligation to use our space efficiently, I just don't think that we could justify keeping both lanes of both sides of Collins Street as fully separated bike lanes, when largely they're going to be empty for around 17 hours in a 24-hour period. They're empty overnight. 1 or 2 people use them per hour between 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. It's just a completely inefficient use of space, and also the loss of revenue, loss of access. So I do think it will be transformative, but there's a very big risk, and I'm actually confident that we'll play out this way, it'll be transformative in all the ways we don't want. And I agree that human life is really important. But if that's the principle we take, then we would ban cars and put bike lanes absolutely everywhere. But we don't do that because it's not practical. So I sent around an amendment to elected members and also to the CEO and Mr Young, adding in a point 6 that the CEO brings back to Council at our next meeting a more definitive framework that clarifies what the measures for success actually look like for the trial. So I'll be, like I said, we've got the metrics there, what the officers plan to measure, but we need spelt out for the Council how it's going to be measured and what success is. So is success a 50% increase, or is it a 2% increase? And how it's going to measure, because we're talking about the number of, increasing the number of women. I mean, how is that going to be measured? Are we going to be checking pronouns, or are we just going based on skirts? So I think we need to get some clarity around that, because we've called this a trial, but no one really believes that. It's an implementation. And if it was a true and genuine trial, then we would have some true and genuine parameters around what success of the trial looks like. And they're completely absent. So I do hope even the people that are for this concept gung-ho regardless, I hope that they can see that to have a trial, you actually have some measures in place that determine what the trial success looks like. I do think, fast forwarding it, because just a quick question, this is planned for work will start in January, is that right? Yep. So January. And part of me is thankful that it's after Christmas, but part of me just wants to bring it on sooner. But I'm concerned at the fact that we're spending around, I think it's $300,000 on the temporary work, and we've already gone out asking for $4.2 million on the permanent funding for permanent technology, which again goes to show that this isn't a trial at all. So is any of the tactical, that $300,000 we spend, is any of that, the materials we use, are they reusable in other locations? Question? CEO, through you.
Through you, Lord Mayor. Yes. The infrastructure we're using is tactical treatment. Infrastructure can be used elsewhere.
Okay, that's good. That's good, thank you. So, all in all, as I've said from the start, I'm not against bike lanes at all. I just think that this proposal is extreme, given it's both sides of the street. I was completely supportive of one side down, one side up, or perhaps on Liverpool, and advocated strongly for the Clearway model, which would have made complete sense for everybody. But I do think that to be taken seriously, we should have measures around what success of this trial actually looks like. So I'll move that amendment, please.
So I'd need a seconder for the amendment, Alderman Zuko. So would anyone, I'm just going to deal with the amendment first, just to keep it a bit clearer. Would anyone like to speak on the amendment?
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I actually just only have a simple question, just with regards to the amendment. Have you thought about this particular aspect, or have you covered it at all on how the metrics will be measured?
CEO?
Yeah, through you, Lord. Sorry, apologies. Through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, so yeah, we try to identify there's 7 metrics, so we have tried to identify, and what we've tried to do there is identify what would success look like. So we have said increase. So increase would be plus whatever it is today. Same with diversity. So there's a proportion of diversity. We know it's about 25% female as an example. So an increase in that proportion towards more females would be seen as success. So we haven't been sort of targeted as far as pure numbers in that sense, because we don't want to limit what it could be. But yes, we feel like we have addressed that in this 7 metrics.
Oh, sorry. The CEO would like to add to that.
Just briefly to that response, because I had the same considerations in terms of reading this report, but there were, particularly the last 2 metrics, are really quite robust in terms of the trial needs to achieve a net positive sentiment towards the project from all stakeholders, including the users of the street, nearby properties and businesses. So that is a bar that needs to be achieved in order to demonstrate compliance with the metrics, equal to the last, which was that broader stakeholders need to record a net positive sentiment towards the project also. So.
Sorry, I just have
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Questions. So just to confirm, the last 2 metrics, the measure of success has already been outlined by the CEO, and the increase that you're referring to is how the metrics will be measured. How are you going to collect that data?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. So yes, good question. They're all slightly different. So for example, numbers will be collecting through counting devices. So that's how we'll be counting, and then we'll be benchmarking that close to installation. So rather than using dates a long way out, we'll be benchmarking it close to. So things like diversity, we'll be doing sort of specific targeted counting sites and counting days. That'll be done through that process. So accessing through mid-block, we've got other counting equipment we're using as well that will start to provide that data, as well as observational surveys as well. So road safety, targeting speeds, we'll be doing counting through vehicles and actually measuring the vehicle speeds through Collins Street, and so that'll be a reasonably straightforward one. User confidence, which includes increased perception of safety, we'll be doing based on survey, so actually trying to test with those users. And the last 2, I think the CEO sort of addressed in a bit of detail, will be sentiment for those both businesses and stakeholders, as well as broader community, again targeting net positive sentiment.
Thank you very much. So I'll just speak to the amendment now, if that's okay. And I'd like to thank Councillor Elliott for bringing forward her amendment. Unfortunately, as has already been outlined by Mr Vidal and the CEO, clearly there's going to be measures put in place that actually evaluate these metrics in the form of observational aspects to do with surveys, diversity in terms of specific counting devices and so forth. Perhaps on the basis of that, I would consider that maybe this amendment is rather superfluous.
Further discussion?
I just have a question through you to the appropriate person that can answer it. What is the measurement of success? Is it 1%, 2%, 10%, 20%?
I think, CEO, are you happy for Mr Vidal to answer that?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. So yeah, we've identified the 7, and each of those 7 have a direction that we're heading. So increase in users is obviously the measure of success.
So we're looking at a 7%. Is that what we're looking for?
I think Alderman Zerko, the point is the information will come back to the elected members and we can decide whether, 7%, 20%,
I understand, but I'm
is acceptable in terms of...
What are the officers looking for as a measurement of success? What percentage?
That's been answered, Alderman Zerko.
I don't think it has, but anyway, I'll sit down.
Alderman Bloomfield.
I'd like to ask the same question, but let's be very clear. When they say net positive, it means one more person. That's it. One surveyed answer more than before, or one surveyed answer that is greater than the no's. That's literally all this means. We've already seen this with the parklets where they interviewed just one person and said, that's good enough. We got one person that said yes, we don't need to interview anyone else. And we voted on that. We said that was good enough, and it's not. So realistically, I think we actually have extremely good basis here to push a little harder than this. I don't want to see net benefit. I want to know that we have a statistically significant increase in users, a statistically significant increase in likability, if you like to call it, that people are happier. And I don't think one survey answer more than before is good enough. This is a city. This is $4.1 million we're going to invest, and we're going to do it on one person's say-so. How the hell is that good enough? So, no, I think we have a very well-justified question here. And I would like for the first time to see some quality assurance based on our research, our analysis and our answers. Because that is what that question and this amendment was asking for. It is simply not good enough to say, oh, well, mate, we've got one more woman driving, that'll do. It's actually not good enough. And the fact is, we don't actually have here an answer that actually also specifies how you're going to identify a female versus a male rider. Because when we got the high-def video, it was very hard to tell. What are you going to do? Stop them and ask them? And the other thing is, too, when you're talking about these days where you're going to go out there and do the viewing of the riders and so forth, is this going to be one of those public days where you announce the bicycle network and say, hey guys, we're going to go and do another one of these counts, can you come out and ride? Or are we going to do it according to marketing standards, which basically means that when we do our research, it is a blind test. Is it going to be blind this time, or are we just going to do propaganda again? Because I want this council to apply appropriate quality assurance standards on research, reports, and then we get good strategies.
Further discussion? I think Councillor Kitsos might have been up first.
Look, this is a space that I feel really comfortable talking about because we're talking about data, and as a researcher with numerous years' experience in this space, look, I can confidently say that we're getting a bit muddled up between quantitative data and qualitative data and what the research question is actually asking and aims to achieve. So we've heard from officers tonight that we've got some clear outcomes set, some clear targets that are both qualitative and quantitative. So quantitative is when we're talking about numbers. So that's when we're counting things. Now that's when you can talk about statistical significance and the difference between groups. So that will be quite clear in the analysis because you can look at what was happening before and what was happening after. However, qualitative research is more subjective. It's when we're trying to find out how people feel about things. It's when we're trying to look at complex systems. Now, what we talk about in the research world with qualitative data is when you've reached data saturation. So nobody actually knows when that's going to be in academic research because nobody knows what the story that the qualitative research will give you. So it's because people an opinion is a constantly shifting landscape. So the idea with surveys and with interviews is that you continue to gather your qualitative data until such point that you're not coming across any new themes. So this is a much less tangible thing to measure. But I'm quite satisfied by the answers tonight from both the CEO and the officers that this project does have really clear targets, really clear things that we're aiming for to prove that this trial has been successful. So I can't support the amendment tonight.
Discussion on the amendment. Any further discussion on the amendment?
Sorry, I'm not going to speak. I think I've already spoken, but I did just have some more questions, if that's okay. Did you mean to propose...
Deputy Lord Mayor.
Sorry, did you mean to propose, the council staff that is, that only one person, when a survey increases by one, would be a measure of success?
Through you, CEO.
Thanks. It's certainly not intended that would be the case. Obviously, it does need to be statistically valid, as Alderman Bloomfield has highlighted, and certainly that's something that we would ensure that there is a robustness in terms of that reporting coming back to council when it is due.
Sorry, and just one final question. So the diversity in the research methodology with regards to collecting that data, will that help measure success from the various different perspectives, both statistically or say quantitatively and qualitatively?
If I may, through you, Lord Mayor. So this methodology isn't something we've adopted by ourselves. This is based on Australian best practice monitoring evaluation framework. So it does have that rich, diversity in ways we're trying to collect this data. So we're trying to adopt that sort of best practice. So that's why we're going down this pathway, and that's what we're doing.
Can I just ask a follow-up question to that? So if this is a sort of Australian best practice set of information to collect, will there be other trial bike lane projects that may have collected similar data that we can compare our results against when you do eventually bring it back to us in 2 years' time? Do you understand what I'm...
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good question. I assume so, and I think so, from my understanding. But I have to double check the exacts. I know that this monitoring evaluation framework's reasonably new in its current state, so whether a previous version... I think the answer is yes, but I'll have to double check, yeah.
I have another question. If you're assigning best quality practice with this very vague terminology, what was the parking strategy research? Was that best practice? Because I cannot believe that an outcome of one interview was...
Alderman
well,
Bloomfield,
my question is, was the parklet research also best practice? Because that's what came here last time, and we are not defining these.
I'll ask the CEO to respond to that question.
Thanks. No, I think we would put our hand up to say that wasn't, and certainly that's something as an executive and staff we are reflecting on and ensuring that we are providing more statistically valid, research or findings of research when it is coming to council. So it was a fair point, and I think that's something that we will address, and certainly as part of this you will see that it is statistically valid and robust.
Sorry, I've got one more question. If that is the case, how come this particular statistic with the list of outcomes are so incredibly vague that it could easily be implied that one person? How come that is written that way? Surely we should have written this better.
CEO?
If I may, through you, Lord Mayor. So we reference in the report the use of the monitoring evaluation framework. We've tried to articulate that clearly, that we are adopting that best practice monitoring evaluation framework, which does have those high bars.
Just a question, Lord Mayor.
Alderman Zuko.
These best practices, how did the evaluation come from? The City of Melbourne, City of Sydney, City of Copenhagen, or the City of Bendigo?
Yeah, through you, Lord Mayor. So it's best practice Australia, but I understand the City of Melbourne's been a key sort of bedding ground for some of this best practice research. So the City of Melbourne probably the standard bearer there.
Councillor Kelly.
Through you to the appropriate officer, what historical evidence and how far does it go back do we have of baseline data of bike movements from Mole Street to Murray Street, and at what intersecting points are there? That's in bike movements. and what other is there any associated? I think I did ask this question before and was told no, we don't have any historical evidence on the new Argyle Street data. I'd like that confirmed as well. So in summary, what historical evidence do we have of other bike movements, particularly in this area we're looking at, and any other area, and how far does it go back? And not just the one that was previously mentioned at the top of Mole Street, which captures a whole heap of other movements and all that. I'm talking specifically to this Collins Street area, and how many points. What baseline data is there, and how far does it go back?
Well, thanks, Councillor Kelly. CEO, did you want to?
Through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, it's a good question. So we've got data back to 2012. So that's at the intersection of Collins Street and Mole Street, the rivulet, that rivulet end. So that's probably our baseline data that we've collected through various means, but the primary means for this is continuous counting of bicycles on that route. So that's further down. It's been a little bit more done periodically, but at that end since 2012.
So has that been tabled, or have you got hard evidence of that? Through you, Lord Mayor.
Did you want to take that on notice? Or
take that on notice, please. Yeah.
In terms of providing that detail? Okay. Okay. Councillor Coates, is this on the amendment?
Yes, Lord Mayor.
All right.
Yes. Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, on the amendment, I sort of agree with comments by Councillor Kitsos. There is qualitative and there's also quantitative. I would just note that, look, the question before me is whether to add this 0.6. 0.6 is asking that the CEO bring back the framework clarifies the measures that must be met to be deemed success. It doesn't actually specify that they have to be either qualitative or quantitative. In my mind, I would imagine that if this motion, parts 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 were approved by Council tonight, one of the first actions in preparation for that January implementation would be for them to sit down and go, well, item 4, for instance, commits us to monitoring and evaluation, which we've heard of tonight. There's already a process underway there, but that's going to be done at 1 month, 3 months, 12 months, and updates provided. So I'm reasonably confident that this reporting will, in a large part, take place. I guess in adding that item 6, what it's doing is we all know this is a reasonably contentious area, and there was a lot of public interest in this, and I guess it is work that's probably going to be happening anyway, which is over the next month. I have no doubt that the implementation team for this project will be sitting there and going, well, when it does go live in January and we need to report back under item 4 at the 1 month interval and at the 3 month interval, what are we reporting against? How are we going to measure it? All those questions will be stuff they'll be doing in any event. So look, the Deputy Lord Mayor said this, in her view, is a superfluous motion, and that.
No motion, the amendment.
Oh, sorry, amendment to a motion. Apologies, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong or it's not one that we can support tonight. I think in large part this is work that's going to be happening anyway, but there will be members of the community that, when they are looking forward to this 1 month evaluation and monitoring report, they'll be wanting to know, well, how do I interpret that? Did we get what we were aiming for or not? And look, trying to forecast what you're going to use is difficult. You might get responses and surveys that were about stuff that you weren't anticipating, but I have no doubt they'll be doing the work regardless. And I think the community out there are genuinely interested in this. They want to see what measures are we going to be using, how are we going to monitor it, how are we going to implement it, what is going to be, what am I likely to receive at this 1 month mark? And so, I just don't see any harm in this. I think that inevitably there will be changes to behaviour when this goes in place. We all expect that. Are those changes high enough, good enough, a success, not a success? What's the measurements on that? How's it done? How do we assess it? All those sort of questions I've no doubt they'll be doing in the next month anyway. And look, I think I'd be interested to see it come back in October. I'm sure if it can't come back in October for whatever reason, we'll be given advice as to why, but I don't see the damage in putting it in as a recommendation, as an amendment to this motion. And noting that really the ongoing monitoring and evaluation under number 4 sort of commits the organisation to this anyway. But I think there is community interest in this item, and so I guess the earlier we can see that and how it's going to be done and understanding those measures of success, what measures, is in my view, a public benefit. So, look, I don't see any harm in the amendment. I can understand the argument where some people say it potentially would be superfluous, but I find myself leaning towards supporting it, and I think it in many ways reflects work that will be undertaken regardless.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question to the officers. So point 4, ongoing monitoring and evaluation will be undertaken at 1 month, 3 months and 12-month intervals post-installation. Will the monitoring and evaluation be measured against the KPIs that you have set in the item of an increase in the number of riders, an increase in the diversity of riders, an increase in perceived safety as measured by mid-block crossing numbers as a proxy, car speeds and general feedback? Will those measures be considered as part of the 1 month, 3 month, 12-month evaluation process and reported back to Council?
Mr Vidal or Mr Holliday?
Through you, Lord Mayor, that is correct.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I will only speak very briefly, but I would call that a definitive framework to measure success. So I cannot support the amendment because it is the very different definition of superfluous and adding work to a council that already has lots of work to do.
Any further discussion on the amendment? I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Aye. Show of hands. All those in favour.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly.
And against?
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
That hasn't been carried. So we'll move now back on to the substantive motion. Would anyone like to speak to the substantive motion? Councillor Kitsos.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, for me, the Collins Street vision is a transformative project that promises to reshape one of Hobart's key corridors into a safe, vibrant and accessible space for all. I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the supporters that are here in the chamber tonight who have led a strong, inspiring campaign in support of this project. For many years, Collins Street has been recognised as a vital route for cycling, walking and micro-mobility. From the Principal Bicycle Network Plan of 2008 to the Central Hobart Plan of 2023, the importance of this corridor is clear. Now, with the introduction of separated, safe cycling infrastructure and reduced traffic speeds of 30 kilometres, this vision is finally turning into a reality. The introduction of safe cycling lanes is a significant step forward in making Hobart a city where everyone, regardless of their age or ability, feels safe on the road. This infrastructure is more than just a cycling lane. It's an investment in public health. Research consistently shows that when we make it easier and safer for people to choose active transport, we see increased physical activity, reduced rates of chronic illness, and an overall improvement in well-being. This notion has been supported by a letter I received from highly respected and qualified medical and public health research academics from the Menzies Institute for Medical Research. We know this. The evidence is clear. Slowing the traffic speed to 30 kilometres is not merely about traffic management. It's about safety and creating streets that invite connection. Slower speeds mean fewer accidents and safer conditions for cyclists, for pedestrians and for motorists alike. I would also like to note that one of our doctors working at the emergency department has written to me noting that the introduction of these initiatives will mean less trauma in the emergency department. This vision also sees an increase in accessible parking. We are not blind to the people in our community who need this vital infrastructure. As an occupational therapist, I understand that not all people can ride and scoot. But I'm confident that by encouraging those who can, it ensures that those who can't have less congestion and more parking options available to them in the CBD. By providing more parking options for those with limited mobility, we ensure that everyone can participate in city life. But this project is more than infrastructure to me. It's about a sense of community. When we talk about a city that is designed for all, we mean a city where families can cycle together safely and where residents feel a deeper connection to the streets that they call home. This vision aligns with our broader goals of reducing emissions, improving air quality and promoting sustainable urban growth. Encouraging active transport not only helps health, but it addresses traffic congestion and supports Hobart's transition towards a zero emissions future. This project is laying the groundwork for a healthier, greener city for generations to come, and I personally look forward to riding down Collins Street safely with my family and friends.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you, Chair. There's been a fair bit of criticism of this proposal in recent months, but I note that it seems to be coming from a fairly small number of people. We're having a bit of a chat about statistics earlier and significant statistics. Well, the statistics, as far as I'm concerned, are that I've been contacted over 100 times about this particular issue, which is by far the most times I've been contacted since starting on council. 107 were for this proposal, 5 were against. Now, I think that's a fairly significant statistic, and I do think it's worth sharing. Look, there's a really clear need to increase protection for cyclists on our roads, and I think it's also very clear that this trial will result in more people cycling into the CBD instead of driving, which is a good outcome for everyone, ironically including car drivers. There are less cars on the road, there is less competition for parking if more people ride their bikes. And look, I won't speak for too much longer, but I did want to mention the fact that the trial also includes a major increase in the number of disability parking spaces in the immediate vicinity of Collins Street, doubling the number of these spaces. It's a really big win for disability parking access in the immediate area, which does actually, of course, include the Hobart Centrelink office. And it was a key ask of mine when considering this proposal. So look, despite the claims about a reduction in parking spaces potentially causing accessibility issues, the amount of parking spaces for people living with disabilities is actually doubling. And I think that's another significant statistic, doubling the number of parking spaces for people living with disabilities. Look, there's a lot to like about the proposal. I'm certainly going to be supporting it, and I would ask my colleagues to do the same. Thank you.
Just a question, Lord Mayor, through you to the appropriate officer or person that can answer the question. Was there a petition of over 2,500 people presented to this council in regards to this proposal that were against the proposal? Yes or no?
CEO?
Yes.
Further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Alderman Bloomfield.
This room is supposed to be about meeting of minds. We compromise with each other to get the best outcome. And what I struggle with enormously is I don't think there's a single person in this room who didn't want some form of a bike lane. We were happy mostly with one, but a lot of us didn't like the concept of two. That's compromise. Unfortunately, no matter what argument was supplied, and I can tell you that I got just as many people upset about the bike lane as I got promoting the bike lane. So I think it's very relative to who got what emails. I think that we have to be very careful about exactly what we are doing here, because we're here to represent the community. So I'd like to think that I am here representing those 2,500 people who genuinely thought that their petition to say, look, we'd like one lane, not two, would be heard today. Because I'm beginning to think that the only way this council hears anyone is if they have the possibility of a public meeting being held. Very expensive process, but it seems that no matter, we're not being heard. And I think there are going to be genuine costs with this dual lane, because it does the same thing over and over. Suggesting that bike lanes increase small business accessibility is great if you've got public transport, but we don't. and to continually do comparatives with cities that have public transport that works is unfair. And then on top of which, we look at who we have in our community. And we have community members that are currently suffering. They're suffering profoundly from job insecurity. They're suffering profoundly from food insecurity, and onwards and onwards. And in fact, when we talk about things like promoting bike lanes and bike use, we hear this old adage of, oh, but it's healthier, it'll make our population healthier. We have a terribly unhealthy population. Well, if we look at the actual statistics and the actual research, the research actually says that, firstly, the prime indicator of health is actually poverty. The less well-off and well-resourced you are, the more likely you will be unwell. That is research fact. We have the Australian Unity Wellbeing Index. It's a 22-year study, and it actually says there's a clear link between low income and lower levels of personal wellbeing. Okay, so we're talking fact here. And then there's social determinants of health, which go on to say exactly what I just said. The other point was, back in the ABC news, we had in 2022, there was an adage that was actually newly termed, and that was, you cannot outrun a bad diet. This was based on 360,000 individuals, based research over a number of years, and they determined that the effects of diet far outweighed the effects of exercise. So suggesting that all the fat people get out there and ride a bike and they'll be better off is rubbish. And it's unfair, it is gaslighting those who are not doing well. What it does also do is it actually effectively ensures that the 70% of people who engage with this city, who are not inside the city, they're actually outside the Hobart City area, that's too big a distance to do it by walking, by cycling. Very few cyclists will come from outside. So therefore, the only alternative is either public transport, which has been failing, or it's a car. But we're going to close that down. And I was looking at, for instance, the Transport Network Operation Plan in Hobart, looking at that. And overall, the general road users are at the bottom of the tree. So therefore, you know, we're going to promote walking and cycling, but that's only really going to be the inner city people. May I have 2 more minutes, please?
Moved by Alderman Zuko, seconded by Councillor Dutta. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. 2 minutes.
Thank you. So I think that should you decide to push this forwards, when the small businesses who will start to stagger, I note that we're not going to be measuring insolvencies as a basis of failure here. We're not going to be measuring loss of employment. We're not going to be measuring statistical analysis of loss, which happened profoundly in North Hobart when we put those parking meters in. They lost 30% turnover. And then the council had to race in and change that because, they made a mistake. What is going to happen here? Are we going to have to do the same thing, make these people suffer loss, suffer job losses, and all the other dreadful things that come with this? This is not something to be proud of. This is not something that's going to attain to health. It is going to promote poverty, which is going to actually do the opposite. It is going to promote all the other things which small business are so averse to. We talk about modern business dealings. You know what modern business dealings are now in Hobart? It is apologising to any person that walks in your door to say, I'm really sorry you had to walk a kilometre to get to my office today. I'm sorry there's no parking. Because that is the modern day now in our area. You know, and yes, we might have doubled the number of accessibility parkings, but that simply meant that we increased it by, 2 or 3? Let's be the real numbers here. 2 or 3 extra parks. Congratulations. We are not doing, I think, a fair call. You know, this room holistically would have been happy with 1 lane. No one said they didn't want a bike lane. They simply said 2 is actually unbalanced. It is unbalanced. And it's so disappointing to know that there are others who will turn a blind eye to people suffering, turn a blind eye to increased poverty, and turn a blind eye to increased issues of health. for the fact that, 150 to 200 bicyclists might get a better go, but we're going to avoid speaking about the 400 plus motorists who would have used those parks, who would have engaged and purchased. And let's not forget, ultimately, that there are no bike parking facilities planned at all yet, because apparently this is going to go ahead without that in plan until the state government puts together a plan, and maybe we might get some. But let's guess that we will. Thank you.
Alderman Zuko.
Yeah, Lord Mayor, this is deja vu as far as I'm concerned. It's a total reminder of what happened in North Hobart, where we imposed parking meters on the business community. And then we had to go through a process of removing them. Spent some $300,000 on that project. A trial, I can remember when this actual came up to council, that we looked at this technical trial for the first time, and I said to myself, I think this is a fait accompli. 2,500 people signed a petition. What weight has that been given? Tonight we had Mr Edwards, who probably for the first time had an opportunity to come, and all Mr Edwards could do was come and ask a question. See, if we had the committee process like we had for many years in this council, people like Mr Edwards could come and make representation to the committee. So could the pro people as well. But we've taken that away from our community because this council has taken it away to workshops. So we're not listening to our community, because maybe Mr Johnson could have got his 2,500 people in his petition to come and make representation to council. Maybe all those people that emailed me or called me, that I just said, look, there's no point in speaking to me about it. I've got concerns about it. You need to speak to those elected members who are supportive of this at all costs. I'm not against bikeways. In fact, I'm going to keep on repeating this. When the bikeway from Glenorchy was built, I was the person who put forward to put bike parking in the Argyle Street car parks with showers to support those people that were using the bikes. Because that bikeway, to my point of view, was a very important arterial link. There's this aspect of health, and Hobart's the biggest city of walkers. We could actually, on the outskirts at Mole Street, build an amazing facility for all those people who wanted to ride their bikes from South Hobart to Mole Street, park their bikes safely, shower facilities, maybe a little kiosk having a coffee, and then walk a few blocks into the city. That is healthy. We're not talking about Melbourne here, we're not talking about Brisbane, we're not talking about Sydney or Copenhagen, we are talking about Hobart. What we need to be looking at this city is how we can holistically improve the whole city, not simply by destroying the businesses in Collins Street and the arterials of Collins Street, in which most of those business people haven't got the time to go through these processes. And as Mr Edwards spoke, he was speaking on not behalf of just himself, he was speaking on behalf of a group of people. There are a group of people. But let's go back to North Hobart. What did it take for the traders of North Hobart, who were suffering badly, to get the council to change its mind? It put a big poster up. These elected members with their photos. These elected members are causing me to go broke. SOS. And they put it all up and down the street. Surprisingly, those elected members who supported it walked up and down the street speaking to those traders on, why have you got my poster here? Well, you didn't listen to me. We have not listened to those people on the other side, because Mr Edwards, all he could do tonight... I need 2 minutes, please.
Moved by Alderman Bloomfield, second by Councillor Elliott. All those in favour say aye.
All Mr Edwards could do is try and put his argument up on a question. But if he had the old committee process, Mr Edwards could have sat there, been given 3 minutes to put his submission through. We could have asked questions of him. So could have a lot of other people. I can remember going through processes where we've had the meeting room there with over 150 people wanting to talk to the elected members. I'm sorry, all of you at the back there, you cannot talk to me, but in the committee structures you could. But what we're doing here, the way we're operating, we're going down the track very soon to decide the governance of this council, and we don't give the opportunity to our ratepayers who have concerns. So if it means that we're going to go down this trial for 2 years, like the scooter trial for whatever it is, it's all stuffed up anyway, and we've got questions to ask there. I just wonder, Mr Edwards, and all your business people up and down Collins Street and all the arterials, maybe you should consider the same scenario as North Hobart and have the posters up and down the street as everyone goes bust of those people that supported this, what I call a farce of destroying a street whereby we could actually provide a good service to those people who ride from South Hobart to Mole Street, safe parking facility, bike parking facilities, showers, a cafe, and then be very healthy. Put your runners on and walk the rest of the way into the city for 3 blocks. Please, please. I'm not against bikeways. This is ridiculous.
Further discussion?
Lord Mayor, I think I might be second last here, but anyway.
Oh no, there's still a few people.
I love the use of the word compromise. Now, let's just look at all the roads in Hobart and how many of them have safe bike lanes. Not very many. What's the compromise here? The compromise is to have a street that has safe bike lanes. Other proposals to make them, all those lines on the road that we've done in a lot of places are not safe bike lanes. Sandy Bay Road, I remember 2010, there was a discussion about having a safe, separated Copenhagen-style bike lane back then. It was the same debate as we have tonight, heated debate. Numbers were slightly different though at the time, and we ended up with that compromise where we put just lines on the road. That was disappointing at the time, but we'll have this debate again. This will be deja vu, Groundhog Day, every time there's a bike lane. And while people say, yes, love bike lanes, support bike lanes, it was in my election promises that I support bikes, they don't really support bikes and bike lanes. It's just a nice thing to say because you want to appeal to everybody that you're on that side for that moment. But we'll have this debate endlessly. Alderman Zuko hasn't supported any bike lanes in Hobart, apart from the intercity cycleway. I think that was a great one, and the bike change room or the bike facilities. But when it comes to putting bike lanes on roads, it's a real challenge. And this is not just our council. Every single council across the country goes through this same phase. Melbourne had this big fight, and I remember when they changed Swanston Street and got rid of cars. So it's a pedestrian bike thing. That was the end of the world. But what they've found, and this, I know it's not Melbourne, we're in Hobart, and what they found was the number of people that used that street multiplied enormously. It was far, far more people started to use that street because they got the cars out. It's also got trams, but the bike usage is huge. Melbourne's now struggling in some areas with the number of bikes, so they've got to improve bike infrastructure. But I know it's not Melbourne, we're in Hobart. And little old Hobart will eventually have a lot more bike lanes, and everyone will be for, but eventually it'll get to the point where it becomes the norm. Now, these bike lanes in Collins Street, it's not the end of the world. It's not a great big compromise. It's a small compromise because we don't have a lot of safe bike lanes in Hobart. And this is a particularly important route through the city that comes off the the rivulet track, and it gives cyclists a safe route through the city where they can ride with confidence. And this is a trial, and I didn't contribute to the amendment, but I support the officers in their comments about how we're going to validate whether this is a genuine trial or not. You know, whether it's, you know, increasing it by one person is going to make it a, you know, a done deal that they're going to be there forever. But I look forward to the next couple of years, because this will get up tonight. I'm sure the numbers around the table will support this bike lane and the trial. And over the next 2 years, we'll see what happens and whether this is a great success or a small success, or nothing else changes, or whether it's been a complete disaster. But let's go forward with this trial and we'll see. Because I'm sure the sky won't fall in. I'm sure there'll be very good outcomes, but let's have the trial, let's see. And I'm hoping that they don't, that there's not a move to have a town hall meeting, which will cost us a couple of $100,000 to send out, you know, whatever the letters are, we need to do that. So I'm hoping that people are mature enough to say, okay, let's go through the trial. It's a small compromise in a little city that doesn't have a lot of support for cyclists, because we're just not there yet. But it will happen, and let's let this happen, okay? So let's just vote for this. I hope there's a couple of extra votes. I may have motivated a few people. I don't think so. But let's just be on the right side of history at this point in time. Support bikes a little bit. People have said it in their documents, in their election platforms. Let's hope that they can live up to what they've said in their documents and have a go, not their documents, in their election policy, and support this trial.
Further discussion? Councillor Coates.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I won't be supporting this motion tonight. I did make an election commitment, actually. I did say if I was elected, I would ride my bike. I did. I rode for 3 days down the east coast of Tasmania for diabetes. So there you go. There's a bike riding election commitment for those who weren't aware. Look, I think sometimes it's worthwhile in floating an idea, seeing what the view of the community is, and particularly seeing the view of a community that's most affected by this. And in this instance, we're talking about the people that conduct their trade along Collins Street. And if I was a business who's invested in my fixtures and fittings, who signed a commercial lease and signed up to a property where it currently has the ability for my customers, my patrons, to access, park outside, come in, come out, attend an appointment, and then this was proposed and changed, I'd want to know what their view was. Some of them might be in favour, but I've heard at least from many, many, many who are really concerned, really worried and really against this. And in my mind, that was where this conversation should have ended. Those are the ones who will be the most affected, and unless we have relatively broad support from those, as a trial, I just don't see the benefit in us pushing ahead with it. And I guess within a broader context, we know that there's recently been significant traffic changes in Hobart. Today I was going up Davey Street, just 2 blocks away, block and a half away from Collins, and they've got a bike lane down the left-hand side. They've got it going up there. We know there's clearways being put in Macquarie Street. We know that we've just received updates and funding on transport ferries for Hobart. There are changes that are happening to the transport mix in Hobart at the moment, and to just sort of add something else in for 2 years, which has the potential to materially affect these businesses, in my mind, is just, it doesn't pass the threshold for something we should be progressing at this moment. And look, Councillor Zuko did mention the sort of deja vu moment where it compares this to North Hobart. We have heard tonight, but this was the one of the councillors, Councillor Lohberger, where it's received the most correspondence on. I can't say that's the same for me. I definitely received more correspondence on the cable car. But look, I have received a lot of correspondence on this, and to be fair, a lot has been in favour, but a huge number have also been against. And a huge number have also outlined that this represents to them an existential risk to their business, to their livelihood, to their employees and to their customers. And we did do this in the past with North Hobart. it ended up being a very expensive mistake for the city and a very expensive mistake and impact on those who conduct their trade in this city. As I sit here today, we've currently got we've currently got bike paths being put in Campbell Street, Argyle Street, Davey Street. We've got new clearways on Macquarie Street, and we've got enhanced ferry services to come. So I just don't see that this is the right time to be spending limited council resources in trying to make changes to a Collins Street approach. I think there are other ways to go. And then broadly speaking, when it comes to cycling, it has been put to me that the best bang for buck is trying to make it safe for kids to be able to ride their bikes to school. High schools in particular, but also grades 5, 6. If parents feel that their kids can get to school safely, great, takes the car off the road. We all see the difference when it's school holidays or not as to how much that traffic increases. Unfortunately for us, there's no high school in the city. This is not the sort of people that this route will be targeting and helping. And so, look, for those who live in South Hobart and want to commute by bike into town, great, but that is a very small number of people in the scheme of Greater Hobart, in the scheme of those who need to access and frequent the businesses on Collins Street and the businesses in the CBD more broadly. And so I just think that when this idea was floated, the first people they should have spoken to was those most directly impacted, which are, and those most at risk, which are the traders on Collins Street. The feedback that I've seen, the petition, talking to businesses, the people who've reached out, just an extra 30 seconds, I'll finish. Oh, it's 30 seconds, yeah. And look, I just think, at first do no harm. This, in my mind, will be a very expensive trial that has the potential to be ruinous to some people, and so I just cannot support it. And if it does go ahead, look, I hope it is successful. I really hope that it is successful, because if it's not, we tonight will have brought ruin upon people's livelihoods and their businesses, such as we saw with North Hobart. When I went up there, people were in tears. They were talking about moving out, closing down. There is potential here to do a lot of harm, and I hope we don't.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Just a question. During the implementation of parking meters in North Hobart, was there any associated bike infrastructure at the time?
No, there wasn't. Councillor Kelly, I think, might have been first. Councillor Kelly, yep.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I think the big point everyone's missing here tonight is this whole notion of consultation, and that to me has been the big train wreck associated with this whole proposal. And whether it was parking meters or bike lanes in North Hobart, it's not the point. It was the total lack of consultation. I was president of the traders at that time. We advised the council, please do not put these in based on these grounds. That was ignored, and we've seen the train wreck. It cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and 2 years later, parking meters were ripped out. Lack of consultation here. It took... The two biggest property owners in Collins Street, the 188 Collins, the big old government centre tower, and the ATO building on the top side of that, which take up the whole block. The two landowners of those didn't even know about this until we approached them. I mean, I just cannot believe that. And then when we started some elected members going up and down speaking to the traders about it, council was in a blind panic. They were setting up pop-up stalls, sending out letters and all that. Sorry, you missed the boat. And once that happens to people of Hobart, especially small traders, you've done the damage. And, you're playing with people's livelihoods here. It's not... Sure, it's great to ride bikes and have children come in and buy ice creams and go up and down the street and do their thing. But the people who put their hard-earned reputations and cash on the line to do this sort of thing, this is the real scary thing. And look, this goes ahead and train, but you're not going to see an immediate down. People have signed up for long leases, 3 to 5 years plus at times. So, they're worried. Every single person we spoke to, bar 5 businesses on that strip, were extremely concerned. You know, so ultimately, as I say in summary there, look, it's all about this consultation. Where were the figures that we could say, oh, look, there's X amount of bikes going there? It took Councillor Elliott and me to get up and put a camera on the corner store of Collins and Mole Street there to find out that there was only 70 movements a day maximum. At least that gave us some information into there. How can we have confidence moving forward that the so-called analysis of it's going to be really accurate? Getting back to Mr Edwards and his situation, the point he's trying to make is, you know, where is the study on the impact that was going to be done to these traders? There was none. We heard Mr Verdu say today that, oh, there's no real information on Argyle Street and there is some information maybe on other points of Collins Street. Look, that just doesn't cut it with me. We talk about the amount of people we've had feedback from. Councillor Lohberger, just like I did too, he got his 80 people supporting the bike lane. I also saw that it's 2,500 people that don't support it. I mean, pretty damning evidence there, isn't it? Where's the discussion about the extra car movements that now people exiting Centre Point have to take an extra 2 to 3 blocks to get out to go to Sandy Bay? Not mentioned. Where's the pollution that creates? Not mentioned. Council's own statistics say that 2% of people coming to work in Hobart come by bike. 2%. It's a pretty small minority of people that we are conducting an experiment on the businesses to trial this out. Perhaps the saddest thing for me has been 3 or 4 meetings ago, Councillor Elliott and I put forward a motion that consideration be given to sharing the laneway, the two lanes going there. At morning times, peak time, the bikes could use it, and in the evening as well. And of all the other times, and bear in mind this strip, you go up there and look at early morning, the amount of people who park there for the gymnasium, and then the rest of the day of traders coming in and out, and then of an evening too, you've got the pubs, you've got the restaurants, you've got the cinema at the top there. They heavily rely on parking on there. And where are the bikes? Extension 2 minutes, please.
Moved by Alderman Bloomfield, second by Alderman Zucker. All those in favour say aye. Against say no, carried unanimously.
So, to belligerently say no, the bike people will get this 24/7, even though they're not going to be using it on those windswept, cold days we've had and weekends at the moment. Tumbleweed will be rolling down that road and that's going to be blocked off come hell or high water. The same with all those other times. During the trading times, or say between 10 and 3 to 4 o'clock, it'd be closed off. We don't care. We want this bike lane for our exclusive and our only use. And that, to me, sorry, where's the sharing of our community assets when it comes down to stuff like this? I'm really, really disappointed with the lack of professionalism with this report, the lack of data to convince me and other people, the lack of consultation with all the businesses, small and big, and, you know, as I said, we just learnt nothing from our past mistakes. Hope the sky won't fall in. The sun's going to rise tomorrow in the next few years, no doubt. But, you know, we should sit back and learn from our mistakes of the past. We haven't. And unfortunately, there's no way known in this current form that I will support this motion tonight.
Before, I just want to ask a couple of questions because there's just a few things coming up that I'm a little bit unclear about. Firstly, can I just ask, did we receive a petition for the bike lanes at all?
Yes, we did.
And can you remember how many approximate signatures were on that one?
Exact number, it was over 2,000 from memory.
Right.
100.
1,300 was it? Yeah.
So, can I also ask, has anyone done an analysis of how many parking spaces are both in the public on-street and council car parks and in private car parks? Approximately how many car parks are within a 1 block area of Collins Street?
Yes, we have done that analysis, and I think we've sort of provided them the report. I think the total was, approximately 1,800 available spaces and 400 metres at the centre of Collins Street, yes.
So when you say 400 metres...
1,843 spaces.
When you say,
off-street only.
so that's one block, is it, on either side?
400 metres, yeah.
Is there a proposal to close Collins Street? This seems to be closed to cars. There seems to be some language.
No.
And finally, can I just ask, how many meetings and conversations were had with traders during this process, with traders along the street, and conversations and or meetings?
Yeah, so we had 4 business information sessions, 2 out in the street and 2 that we invited businesses to come and discuss. We had 65 face-to-face conversations as well, so separate. We also, prior to that, spent a week walking up and down Collins Street talking to business operators, as well as writing out to business owners, who have then contacted, and we've been corresponding with them as well.
And from the report, I can see that changes have been made in the design during the consultation period. Were the changes that have been made, were they in response to the businesses that you met with, or with the general public's suggestions largely?
Yeah, the majority in relation to discussions with businesses. So we heard some concerns of businesses around access, around some turning movements, so we were able to make amendments to the design to take into those considerations.
But most of the changes that have been proposed have been as a result of business consultation and engagement?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. Further discussion? Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I might start by saying that I take umbrage with the comments that elected members are turning a blind eye to suffering, that we're turning a blind eye to poverty, that we're turning a blind eye to health. I have no doubt that every elected member would take an exception to such commentary. Sorry, did you want to say something?
No.
Deputy Lord Mayor.
That's one less.
Thanks for that. I also don't want to re-prosecute comments that have been asked and answered by the data and information from our expert staff, but I feel really compelled to. And before I do that, I'd like to start off by just talking about North Hobart, for those of us who were here. People probably know in 2021 a news article came out and business actually told us some of the losses that they'd been experiencing was as a result of COVID, not solely and specifically directed to the car parking meters. It's there, people can look it up if they so please. I also remember commentary in this chamber about Uber drivers. There were many reasons. And again, I won't re-prosecute those issues because I don't think it's very relevant to what we're talking about today. But what I do want to comment on are the 3 C's that have been raised. Car parking, which has already been eloquently summed up by Mr Vidal. Clearways is the 2nd C. Once again, that was another issue that was dealt with in a news article, and it actually specifically referred to from Councillor Posselt about how clearways do not offer the protection of a protected cycleway, and there was no improvements for cyclists over existing infrastructure. So we're talking about equity of how to get somewhere. This is providing that equity. You can ride, you can walk, you can drive. So many different options, and this is part of that equity. And the final C that I do wish to re-prosecute is consultation. Mr Vidal really summed up the consultation that had been undertaken, but I do want to maybe also just point elected members to the stakeholder engagement report. Specifically, maybe you could go through page 6. I'm not going to read it all, but I think for the benefit of outlining the consultation that was made. The following engagement activities are planned as part of the monitoring and evaluation. That goes on to talk about that. But it also talks about what engagement activities, and Mr. Vidal's already discussed that too. The activity was project website containing key project information updated throughout May and June. Project team contact details were provided and email sign up to enable business and general community to receive direct project updates. Communications and media, key stakeholder briefings, elected member engagement, so on and so forth. It goes from page 7 on to page 8. Oh, look, I did re-prosecute those comments. And I do hope that it highlights that we have tried, we have learned, we understand change is hard, and so let's compromise. And you know what the compromise is? Let's have a trial. That's what we're doing. We will receive updates between 1, 3, 12 months. It's not categoric, concrete. It's a trial. So I'll sum up by saying two final things. Number one, thank you very much to our staff. Thank you very much for the consultation that you've undertaken. Thank you very much for incorporating some of those changes as a result of the consultation process. We appreciate the hard work that goes into this, as well as the criticism and the compliments. And finally, I'd like to say thank you to the community. One of the beautiful aspects and one of the most remarkable aspects of living in a democratic country is that community can be part of the consultation in terms of decision making. And that's what's occurred here. Whether you are yes or no, a positive campaign is part of this democratic process where we're entitled to make decisions, and we gather all of that and then we make our decision. So thank you, and thank you likewise to elected members for voicing their opinions.
Okay. Oh, Councillor Dutta.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. I was going to speak earlier on and just ask questions, but you have asked those questions, and hence I don't have to. I want to begin by making a few comments, and my 3 or 4 points are also starting with C. I don't know if there is a genetic link in here. The comment I want to make to begin with, because it's been stated about North Hobart, and there are 2 points I want to make. When the North Hobart parking meters were discussed and the decision was made, it was made in the context and in the background. There were some Uber drivers with particular nationalities putting their legs up and sleeping, blocking these spaces. It was in that context, I remember, these things were brought up. We had to then make a decision, and as elected members, we are guided by our staff who are qualified. They do the research, they brought about evidence to us, they presented to us, and on that basis, we made the decision. Yes, we will go ahead. That's point number one. It's the same thing is happening here today. We are making the decision as elected members. We don't have the expertise. I don't have the expertise, but I'm guided by these qualified people who come here and have presented to us this information. And I have spent time with these people. I've questioned them. I've taken the concerns raised by the community, and I've got the answers. And on the basis of that, I'm making the decision. Point number 2 in my introductory comments, I also want to say this, that I was one of them whose face was painted in North Hobart. I did not go and speak to every business person. It's incorrect. Let me tell you that I didn't. I went and spoke to people asking only some of them, about half a dozen of them, their concerns. And to make the statement that I went around and make the statements is not true. I put my face and my decision once again tonight by supporting this, and I challenge my decision, and the community will decide. In North Hobart, if they didn't like me, they said they were going to vote against me, but they didn't. In fact, I did much better the second time round. Much better. So all I'm saying, we as leaders make these decisions. The voters will tell us, get out of here, your time is over, you didn't support that particular thing. And I will take that message and I will walk away. And I think we will make the decision. But let me just make this comment about these 3 points. Firstly, the consultation. Now, it is my clear understanding that the consultation was made with major stakeholders. That's my understanding. When I asked the staff, I said, did you do that? Was there consultation? Was there proper consultation? Not consultation for the sake of consultation. And they assured me, yes, they did. There was a proper consultation with major stakeholders. So there was consultation. And I'm satisfied with that. Number 2, there were concerns raised. And I understand there were a number of concerns raised. Concerns with Victoria Street. Remember, the first proposal was they were going to take the parking away from there. But when they heard the concerns, they said, no, we won't do that. It'll all remain. They took their concerns. There was a concern about disability parking. They took their concerns and they said, we have 2 spaces, but we'll give them 5. This is a better. Then there was a concern about loading zone. I remember, these were some of the major concerns. What has happened? They've heard the concerns, they've taken it on board, and again, tonight they've told us that they have retained close to 90 to 95 loading zones. That's what I understand. And then I can go on, but time doesn't allow me to talk about these concerns. Point number 3, with regards to change. Now, any change, and those of you who can see me physically, I am at that particular age and stage of my life where I don't like change. And the older you become, the more you realize that you don't like change. May I please request for another 3 minutes?
Councillor Posselt, second by Alderman Zuko. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
Thank you. Now, change is something that we don't like. And I'm saying, you know, my grandchild is so quick with this computer and I have great difficulty. And any time with regards to change, even with where I was working, I didn't appreciate and like change. And so this is a change we are bringing about, and the community will not like it. It's difficult. It's not easy. We understand that as elected members. We know this is something that is not easily done. So all what I'm saying here is that this change that we are doing, it's a calculated change. It's like when you're taking risk in investment. It's a calculated risk that one takes. You don't take risk and it's a blind risk. We have taken a risk, taking the concerns of the people, and as elected members, the majority, hopefully, here tonight will say, yes, we will take this risk, a calculated risk. The community has been consulted. We have taken the concerns, and now it is only a trial, and we will learn from this and make the necessary changes. Now, I would simply want to say this to finish off with. I think this, unfortunately, sometimes can be used as a political tool. And I hope that I am not in that situation, that I will let my political aspirations and ideologies dictate. I want to look at the facts as presented to me by qualified professional staff, at the amount of information they have given us and the arguments. I am going to support this. Thank you.
Hey, I'll put that now. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Councillor Bloomfield, Alderman Bloomfield, my apologies, and Coates, Councillor Coates, sorry, that is carried.
Kelly.
Kelly.
Thank you.
Always like you.
So that's carried. Okay, thanks everyone. I think the gallery may want to leave now if you'd like, but has been included. Suggest that we, it's nearly close enough to 7:30. I'm going to suggest that we do have a dinner break now. So I'm going to adjourn the meeting until 20 to 8 and ask that everyone comes back at that time. Item 12.
Declare an interest.
Alderman Harvey.
Is it me cold or
I could have heater, but you'll have to plug it in.
Someone to move the recommendation. Deputy Lord Mayor, seconder for the recommendation, Councillor Lohberger. Any discussion on the recommendation? Councillor Coates.
I think there was a flagged amendment to this one, was there? I believe there might be a flagged amendment to this one, so...
It's not here at the moment. So.
Yeah, in interest of good government, I might just speak for about 10 minutes to let him...
Maybe you can click on the substantive recommendation until we have an amendment before us.
Okay. Look, Business Events Tasmania, I've used them actually as a... I was putting together a conference, and it was one of those national ones that goes around between all the cities, and you sort of got to put in a bit of a bid, and they were great. So we engaged them, and we knew that it was between us and Brisbane because Hobart and Brisbane hadn't hosted it for quite a number of years, and so. But, you know, we were able to identify who the decision maker was, which was the South Australian, I think, from memory, and they were able to organise for him to come down and inspect some of the venues. They put together a big bid pack that went to all the other state divisions and for this conference. Look, Business Events Tasmania, brilliant. They had connections of all the hotels in Hobart, all the sort of conference and functions. So we were able to say to them, look, we think we'll get about 100 to 150 delegates. We're going to need this sort of accommodation. This is what we're sort of thinking and planning. And, you know, for a lot of organisations, you don't run these very often. You only sort of run them every, 5, 6, 7 years if it's your turn to host. And for us in the committee, we were, none of us had been on it when Hobart had previously hosted it. And Business Events Tas were great. So they helped us put together a bid document. We sort of gave them the rough parameters, and they came back with suggestions and said, look, here's hotels that sort of fit your target. So, one of them was for conference venue Mona plus accommodation. I think the Warsaw from memory put in a bid. The Grand Chancellor, the bigger ones obviously had an opportunity. They helped us put together a nice sort of glossy document talking about the benefits, things and activities that the conference attendees could do outside of the conference. Business Events Tasmania really did help us a lot. This was when did we host? 2012, I think. So it's, quite a while ago now. But they were great, and it was interesting because that was where I first got to see, the coalface of work that they did. I think for a lot of us, if conferences, events, whatever, but it is a very competitive market. It does bring benefits. It often brings delegates and people to stay in our hotels who come midweek. People who then come see Hobart, and we all know how beautiful it is, but for a lot of people in Australia, they don't know what Hobart's like, and you come here for work and you go, oh, I've got to come back. It really was a good experience working with Business Events Tas, and I know that there's been a historical partnership there, and I guess as the capital city where we do disproportionately benefit from the commercial rate base of the hotels, of all the businesses in the commercial sector that then support those visitors to our city. We benefit by being a state capital because a lot of organisations do. They sort of go around all the capitals, but it still can be competitive. And, there's some facilities that, frankly, don't exist in Tassie. There's conferences that we just don't have the stuff to support. One year I did a project with Hair and Beauty Tasmania, and we actually ran a conference stall at Hair and Beauty Australia in Melbourne. And that goes between Melbourne and Sydney every year. That conference, always in the June long weekend. A lot of hairdressers will close down for the weekend, send all their staff along. I think it has about 15,000 attendees, and really good fun. Get to see all the innovation. There's fashion shows and all that stuff. That's the sort of thing Hobart doesn't have the capacity to host at the moment. But maybe in the future. But there are some bigger ones coming through. It was only, I think, last year we had that Sown Investment Conference where they got to showcase Tasmania. Obviously, we know it's not necessarily Business Events Tasmania one, but the Wooden Boat Festival brings a lot of people. I'll continue talking at the clock, but I think I might stop in about 30 seconds if he doesn't turn up. And look, so I just think Business Events Tasmania is worth it. To talk quickly about our approach to funding and partnership, that is a discussion that we're having outside of this ask, and it's something that I think we should consider going forward. I do want to have a look at all of these partnerships that we involve ourselves in and how we can, appropriately get best bang for buck, but also equity. I think it's fair. We are the capital city. We do have a commercial rate base to play our part, and our part of our pie is probably a relatively large one. But it's fair enough for us to say to these organisations, we can't be your sole source of funding or your only source of funding, and looking at how they commercially operate their businesses. With that relatively unprepared and long speech, I don't have an issue with the motion as it stands before me, but I do note there is a proposed amendment that's been circulated, and I look forward to further discussions around how we structure these things. Thank you.
Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor, and apologies to the room. I was just dealing with some ratepayers. I'd like to move an amendment to this item which has been circulated already. It's on the screen. And just to express the purpose of it very briefly, I don't need to speak in great depth. All this is doing is giving the elected members, the council, a chance to have a little bit more oversight, a little bit more say, and throw their ideas about what the future of this funding looks like to officers so that we can have a more comprehensive discussion for the next round of funding. So for 24-25, I think it would be unfair for us to, massively change funding that we have committed to at the 12th hour. And so all this does is set us up to not do that. We can talk about funding at the first hour rather than the 12th hour. And it may well be increased funding, it may well be decreased funding, it may well be no funding, or it may well be keeping the funding the same. Just gives us more oversight and a little bit more discussion. So I'd ask that my colleagues take this amendment in good faith, that they will have further input and be able to make their views clear for next year in a more robust discussion.
Is there a seconder for this amendment? Deputy Lord Mayor. Any discussion on the amendment? Bloomfield?
I question that this is even needed, to be honest, this amendment, simply because I believe all grants and so forth will be assessed and evaluated anyway as part of our due process.
Any further discussion on the amendment? I'll put the amendment. All those in favour say aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands. All those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Coates, Councillor Posselt, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, the Deputy Lord Mayor and the Lord Mayor.
Against.
Alderman Zuko, Councillor Elliott, Alderman Bloomfield and Kelly. It's carried.
That's carried. So now on the substantive motion, would anyone else like to speak on the substantive motion as amended? Alderman Bloomfield.
I'm quite impressed with this particular organisation. Of all the organisations that we tend to supply funding to, this one is a not-for-profit, so all of the money goes to doing its job. We're not financing somebody's bottom line, and in particular, the return on investment is quite significant. For the small amount of money they're asking, comparatively to other groups that ask us for significantly more, I am surprised that we aren't looking further to seeing what else we could do to support these people, simply because this is exactly what we need with the upcoming recession, that we need to get bodies in the ground spending with us so that we can actually fund it as a city. And in particular, I note that the CEO has the right to negotiate with this particular motion, and I do hope that includes the potential for creating a greater tie or relationship with this organisation, so that we can ensure that when they're out there face-to-face selling people our city and our state, that is done with the greatest capacity available. Because one of the things that I'm mostly aware of is that this city and this state is best sold with personal face-to-face experience. I know that when the IPA has functions, we do conferences throughout Australia and overseas, and the Tasmanian one was always the most popular. It was the one that everyone was most reticent to come to, but once they came, they always came back. It was the one they loved the most. But it takes people having the ability to turn up, learn, and then sell from that point. So realistically, I can't imagine that we don't support, and importantly, I think that whatever else we could do on any other basis via the CEO would be really important.
No further discussion on this item. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 13.
Councillor.
Oh, okay.
Hit the button. Quite loud.
Item 13 is the Taste of Summer sponsorship. Wait. Councillor Harvey, we're on to item 13 now, Taste of Summer sponsorship proposal. There's a recommendation from, and it's been moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. Any discussion on this motion?
Just have a question first up. Maybe it's my memory, maybe it's a bad day I'm having. If I recall correctly, when we discussed this last time, I'm sure it was either myself or someone else actually put forward that the CEO, it was a different CEO, it was an acting CEO, discuss or negotiate the potential of all the equipment to, because we've got it all stored up there. I remember. Has that occurred? That's the question.
Yes, through you, Lord Mayor. Yes, we've had initial conversations with the state government around all of the PW1 kiosk equipment that's really only used for the taste and dark mofo, of actually passing that to the state government.
Sorry?
So initial discussions with the state government around the ownership of that equipment.
Okay, so that's happening at the moment. Okay, that's good. No worries. Thank you.
Any further discussion on this matter?
I have a few questions. With regards to the $65,000, it in the report states that it will be predominantly given to or used towards the community day. Now, the clarification I want is that, what does it mean, the predominantly? Is it 90% or 98%? What sort of money is used for community day?
Lord Mayor, it's really to ensure that there's free entry to the event. I don't have a specific percentage if the whole sum is spent on that or just other matters, but it's targeted towards the community day.
Thank you. Now, I have just a number of points, and similarly on this issue as with the other one, and I think someone might also move, I don't know if there is a amendment as well, but I have a number of points that I have observed in here. Firstly, the $65,000 that is predominantly used for the community day. And my question is it value for money for the ratepayers of Hobart? Then when this happens, it's they're able to go on New Year's Eve from 12 to 4 o'clock for about 4 hours. Now, the question that I'm asking myself, is there an alternative day that we can use so they can have a free day? These are just questions that I'm asking. The other information that I am interested is in regards to the Christmas Eve function as well. When they close at 4 o'clock and people then enter for the Christmas Eve and pay about $89 per head. Now, it is my understanding there's about 4,000 people who pay that amount per head. Now, that itself adds up to close to $300,000 income on that particular night. I also observe that the state government funds them for 5 years. There is an arrangement of $7.7 million. Now, in 2018-2019, the state government, when we ran it, only contributed $20,000 towards it. In 2019-2020, they contributed $250,000, and yet it was all free. No one paid to enter there. Now, the cost of running when we were doing it, it appears from what I've read, if my reading is right, that it cost us about $2.8 million. Now, when you do your sums and calculate and put the income and expenses, I have a number of questions and queries. Now, even when you look at the total number of people who have gone through, the patrons, 85,486. Now, even if you times that by 10, because they pay about $15 per head and more for family, and that itself would give you quite a hefty sum that comes in. And then the other observation that I make in the report is that the stall turnover is of $4.2 million. And out of that, on the average, they take 15%. Now, if they take 15%, again, it comes to about 630,000. It comes just as an income from the stallholders. So these are, the observations I make from the report and my concerns. And I would, suggest if there is a addition and amendment that we reviewed, I would put it in that category as well. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councillor Posselt.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. No need to speak any further. Again, there is an amendment that was circulated to the same vein as the previous item earlier in the day. Councillor Dutta's insights are part of why I think that these amendments are prudent, so that we can have a more robust discussion and better understand the best value for money for the ratepayer. And it's not necessarily about decreasing funding, moving funding elsewhere, increasing funding. It can be all of those things, and we can look at different models for whether or not, the $65,000 is better to buy a different day of tickets or buy naming rights to the New Year's Eve celebrations to support the fireworks and things like that. This is just asking for more discussion and for the council to, again, have more oversight. So once again, I'd ask councillors around the table to take in good faith that we're just asking for a little bit more information here.
Any discussion on the amendment?
Could I just get a clarification on what our grants review will bring back to us with relation to this grant?
Well, look, I'm in your hands, Council, in terms of what you wanted to bring back. So basically what... not this review,
the whole council review of our grants process. Will this particular grant be included in that overall grants review?
So the nature and the bucket of money, if you like, the particular grant, yes, in terms of where this money is sourced, but in terms of the ask that we are receiving from the event organisers, not necessarily, which is why this review has been identified in terms of working with them around understanding the value that that it provides to Hobart, with a view to informing any I guess future considerations, but for them particularly any future applications they make. So.
Okay, if there's no further discussion on the amendment, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against say no. Carried unanimously. Any further discussion on the substantive motion as amended?
Lord Mayor, I take the point, Councillor Dutta. What you've got to actually understand what might have happened in 2018, what happens in 2024, in regulatory terms is completely different. Things are changing every moment of the day. How I ran my business back in 2013 and how restaurants are going to go through the ringer, in particular by local councils and bureaucrats at state government and bureaucrats up at Canberra coming up with all these new regulations by the minute has got a cost effect to it. If we read the newspapers, there are businesses going broke right across the country because their insurance premiums have tripled or quadrupled. Running these types of operations, and I can even go back to 97 when I ran the Inter-Dominion series, are very costly and time-consuming as well. But let's not forget what it actually brings to the city of Hobart. The economic benefits that it provides the city of Hobart are enormous. But not only the city of Hobart, the greater Hobart and Tasmania. And culturally, it actually brings to an event cultures right across the board. It provides us an opportunity also to have some fireworks, mind you, not to the standard of Sydney, but it does deliver. And people, I know that I stand next to when I'm at the taste, go, wow. And mind you, I think it's about $120,000 that is spent. $65,000 in dollar terms to what beneficial return it brings the city is huge, because it's not Pinpoint that gets the marketing benefit on the mainland or overseas, it's the city of Hobart. People are coming to the city of Hobart. People aren't going to say, oh, we're going to go to see Pinpoint. It benefits this city, the capital city of Tasmania. What funding the state government delivers is absolutely none really of our business, because the state government's putting into it because of what it generates across the state for our primary producers and employment. Look, you know, $390,000 of in-kind assistance of equipment that sits there for two times a year. I go on about this all the time. If Pinpoint and Mona were not using this equipment, which was specifically built and paid for by the state government for the Hobart City Council, because I was the one that actually sat and argued with the government at the time and negotiated the deal, that was all paid for by the state government. So, if we want to keep it clear as gates in containers and not use it for the taste or not use it for Mona, then we might as well just take it and put it into the tip. Because they're designed specifically for one venue. That's why the sooner we have Pinpoint and or Mona and or both of them have ownership of this equipment, the sooner we can get it out of our coffers. And I've got to say, we never paid for it. So whatever deal we negotiate, we're in front. Lord Mayor, I've got to say, you know, I look at the things that we spend a lot of money on in this council, and $65,000 in cash and $390,000 in kind that sits in our container is not a lot of money for what it benefits the city of Hobart.
Okay, if there's any further discussion,
just a
Councillor
clarification,
Dutton.
Lord Mayor. So is 390,000, is that equipment alone? Or are there other elements in it? In kind that we have?
Ms. Edwards?
Yes, through you, Lord Mayor. There's a range of other additions that are just contained within the report. Predominantly it is the in-kind for the equipment, but there's a range of other things, including fabrication crew and road closure permits, venue hire, car parking, nursery provisions.
It's all in kind.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Moving on now to item 14, Council Governance Review. Moved by Deputy Lord Mayor, seconded by Councillor Posselt. Discussion. Councillor Kitzel.
Thank you, Lord Mayor. Look, I'd like to put forward an amendment tonight, which I've circulated to elected members and to the governance officers. I don't want to read it all because I just think it's too lengthy. It does appear complex by the amount of points that are in the motion tonight. However, the intent is quite simple, and the intent is just simply to remove the points pertaining to the future Hobart Council Committee. And my rationale for removing these is that personally I just feel like I haven't had enough time to fully understand the new governance structure and to fully workshop all of my questions and concerns. And I'd like to see this come to elected member workshop again, just to get a little bit more time to get a handle on what that looks like for everybody involved before moving it to the vote at a later date. So I've handed out a hard copy of this amendment and I've also emailed it around, and it's on the board tonight. So without track changes, sort of guiding your way, basically it just removes point 10 to 15 of decision 1.
So it's point 10 to point 15 of decision 1. Okay.
Thanks, Ms.
Oh, sorry, is there a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Dutta. Oh, and there's something in decision 2, but we can get to that. Can we get to decision 2, perhaps?
Look, I think it's probably best all dealt as one amendment. It's just to carry on with the same points because this is such a lengthy, detailed motion. Again, in decision 2, there's some points that reference the future Hobart Council Committee as per the decisions made in decision 1. So
it's items 29 to 31 from decision 2.
Okay.
So there was seconded by Councillor Dutta. So would anyone like to comment on that amendment, Councillor Coates?
Look, thank you, Lord Mayor. Just speaking just on the amendment, I don't actually have a strong view either way. I'm happy to be guided by the that's why I got up early, just to let you guys know. I'm happy to be guided by the room. Part of me is leaning towards if a member says that they want a bit more time and to get their head around it, I can understand that. I guess the counter argument would be that I'm just aware that this process has already taken a lengthy time, and a delay is a delay. But I don't personally have a strong view either way. But if there's lots of members who feel we shouldn't be delaying that, then that might be the case. But I'm willing to hear any views.
Further discussion on the amendment? There's no further discussion.
So can I just clarify? Did I see the change in day there? Was that part of this one from Monday to Wednesday? So we're voting on.
That was just a correction.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Okay. If there's no further discussion on the amendment, I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Is that? All those in favour?
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Elliott, can't see a hand there, Councillor Coates, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Councillor Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
And against?
Alderman Zurko, Alderman Bloomfield and Councillor Kelly.
Okay. That's carried. I think we've already had a mover and a seconder of the substantive motion as amended. Is there any discussion on the substantive motion as decision 1? Anyone on decision 1? No? We don't need to. Oh, sorry, Councillor Coates.
Thank you. Just a question through you to the appropriate officer or yourself. Is this one to remain the planning authority with the current chair?
That's decision 2, Councillor Coates.
Oh, decision 2, never mind. Okay. Well.
part one of the decision one of this. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. So move on now to decision two, and it does require some decision two as amended. So it's 26, 27, 28.
Sorry, Lord Mayor, I was voting against that motion, that first one.
Okay.
Sorry. Can you just please put it in mind?
All those in favour say aye. Oh, sorry. All those in favour raise your hand of decision one. And against? Carried.
Thank you.
Okay, decision two. So as part of this 26, we would need nominations for 7 elected members. Can I just see if there is nominations for 7 or more? Because if there's more than 7, we'll have to have a little ballot. And I just want to remind people that everyone is actually entitled, I might ask the CEO to explain, that everyone is entitled to vote on this committee, even if you're officially on it or not.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So, look, just to clarify, to make sure people are clear. So, the intent is that all councillors have a role to play on the committee. We have specifically engineered the function of the committee to be able to create a lower quorum to be able to just enable that we are able to operate when life happens and elected members aren't able to attend. So what we need to do is appoint 7 elected members as appointed members tonight, and then the balance, the 5 members, would still be nominee members, but for the purposes of the committee, the seven appointed members would need to be part of the decision.
Okay, so who would like to nominate to be part of the Planning Authority Committee? Like to raise your hand. Got 3, 4. Any further nominations? Anyone else wanting to be on the committee at Planning Authority? We'll need more than 4 people.
Well, you're never here anyway, so it doesn't matter.
You're the chair, don't you? Councillor Dutcher.
We need people. I'm happy to nominate.
So we've got 5. I guess I'll nominate then.
Hard, isn't it?
Okay, we've got 7. So we've got 7 names of people that are members of the Planning Authority Committee.
I've captured them, yep.
So item 28, appoint the following. We needed someone to nominate to be the chairperson of the.
I nominate Mike Dutta.
Second.
Self-nomination, I think.
I don't need seconders. Any other nominations for the role of the chairperson of the Planning Authority Committee?
As well.
But he hasn't put that nominated member.
Be the chair of the Planning Committee.
I didn't even nominate.
No, but you can supersede that now.
Thanks your kind consideration on this occasion tonight.
Okay, so we've only got the one nomination for Planning Committee Chair. I will appoint, then we'll put Councillor Dutta in as the decision, as part of the decision, which we'll vote on in a minute. Are there any other nominations required for this decision?
Just to clarify, Lord Mayor, with the call-in discretion, is it the committee that have that obligation or that have that right to call in to take a decision to the full council, or is it any one of the 12 that can turn up to a planning meeting and call in, or that don't have to turn up at all? How do you go about calling in an item from the planning committee?
Yeah, so when we discussed it as a council, the view was prevailing that it needed to be a decision of the committee to refer.
So the 7 on the committee,
or the 4 that's in it. So yeah, basically a quorum needs to be in attendance, and they need to vote to defer.
Yep.
Okay, so I think we've Deputy Lord Mayor.
Yeah, sorry. I'm so disappointed. Like, I just really felt like I felt compelled to say that. I just felt really disappointed that people who sit here and talk about planning and how they're business people and they've got the business interests of community and talking about planning and really, really, you know, supporting planning and
Point
development.
of order.
So what was the point of order?
Point of order. What's this about?
That's not a point of order.
It's a personal decision whether people want to be on the committee.
Councillor Kelly, that's not a point of order.
What's the relevance as my point of order?
Well, it's really relevant, actually.
Sorry.
Planning.
Excuse me, Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor Kelly, the way the meeting procedures work, a point of order has to be raised, it has to be one that is in the meeting procedures, and I will make a ruling on that, and there's not to be discussion amongst the parties across the chamber. I've ruled that that's not a point of order. I invite Deputy Lord Mayor to continue her intervention.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Yeah, I just felt like I needed to express that. It's so disappointing. And it's not only disappointing, it's so telling. Like, not nominating says more than
Point of order,
actually
Lord Mayor.
nominating.
What was the point of order?
Look, two reasons. First of all, it's whether it is offensive, which I believe it is. Second one is whether it's a misrepresentation. The Deputy Lord Mayor hasn't asked people why they didn't nominate. I mean, in my instance, it was because I served on the planning committee in a previous term of council, and so felt that other members should have the opportunity to do so, and so I didn't nominate. It's got nothing to do with my views around planning and my views around being a businessman, and I'm being misrepresented.
I don't think that's a point of order. One, because there was a councillor wasn't being specifically mentioned and misrepresented, so it doesn't cross that threshold, and it certainly doesn't cross the threshold of it being offensive, because to the reasonable person test, the Deputy Lord Mayor is raising reasonable personal opinions on this particular matter, but it wouldn't count as offensive, so it's not a point of order.
Could I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
Well, tax appropriate in this room?
They're not appropriate, but offensive has to be offensive to a reasonable person. And I think Deputy Lord Mayor is raising her particular concerns about and opinions, of which people do around this table quite regularly. And I need to make a decision about what's offensive and what's reasonable democratic debate in a chamber that is made up of elected members with different points of view. So it is about being respectful, but you can be opinionated and express your opinions in a respectful manner.
Question. Those who didn't stand, do we have the opportunity to say why we didn't stand before?
Not before, because you didn't stand, but you can stand once Deputy Lord Mayor's finished her intervention. Deputy Lord Mayor.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. I'm so incredibly delighted to hear, and perhaps I won't be disappointed, because I'll be incredibly delighted to hear the reasons why people don't want to stand. And that's okay. That's going to be really great, I think. But at this juncture, I have to say, I'm saddened that more people didn't put their hand up. I'm happy to put my hand up, and I too, like Councillor Coates just mentioned, I've been on the planning committee, and I thought it would be really appropriate for other people, for new people who are here. It's their very first term, might love the opportunity to be on there, and didn't make up the numbers, so I thought, well, I felt compelled. But yeah, so I look forward to hearing the reasons why people don't want to be on the planning committee, as Councillor Kelly has intimated that he shall do. But yeah, I just wanted to express my opinion that I felt disappointed that more hands were not put up. And I'm really sorry if that expression offended people.
Further discussion? Alderman Zuko.
Enclosed tonight, we have a 25-page letter, or 12, 14-page letter from the Director of Local Government.
Alderman Zuko, can I just... No, I need...
I'm not mentioning anything about it. I'm just saying we've got... I am saying...
You did, so I need you to be careful about that, because it's...
I know what I'm doing. I've been around this table long enough. Thank you. We've got a letter from the Director of Local Government. The very comments made by the Deputy a moment ago...
Lord Mayor, point of order.
Oh, what's that?
What's the point of order?
The point of order that this is contrary to the Act, this procedure. I would ask that you direct Councillor Alderman Zuko to not reference anything to do with what's closed in this chamber. If he's making inferences of what's in the letter, it still is contrary to the Act.
I think you have to be pretty careful, Alderman Zuko, because
I'll rephrase that if you want it to be like that. I don't have to stand here and give any reason to the Deputy, yourself, the CEO, or members of the public why I do or do not want to put my hand up for a committee. Nor should I be dictated by any other elected member on how I decide or how I put my vote, hand in the air, on how I vote. Because I represent the community of Hobart, not any elected member around this table, and not the CEO or any staff member. Earlier tonight, someone bragged about, how well they did at the election. Well, I know how well I did at the last election. I don't need to be dictated to by elected members and grandstand in the middle of this chamber and ask me how and why I decide what I do. But I was the one that voted against the processes of the governance, and I've done so for 2 years, and until such time we get to a proper governance where the members of the public, as I said earlier in the day, I was not going to get up and speak, but no, you've planted the seed in my head, where members of the public can come to committees and question the elected members rather than these select group of future, whatever you want to call them, meetings. I flagged this 2 years ago, that the process we're going down was not the right process. All we are doing now, and no disrespect, General Manager, CEO, this is another band-aid to our governance process. The planning process we had in place before, and I'll say this to you right now, bring back the old planning process and I'll stick my hand up for planning and I'll stick my hand up to be the chairman. And I'll do that with any process that we have a proper democratic approach where we give members of the public the rights, and we have denied members of the public the rights to come to a committee and question us. So you want Zuko on the planning committee? You want Zuko to put his hand up to be the chairman? Let's go back to proper process. Let's go back to having a planning meeting and let's make those decisions in council like we did for 150 years. But 2 years ago, to shut down certain things, the former CEO made some dramatic changes here which has affected this council dramatically. We have lost more directors and more CEOs than I've ever been in my whole 32 years here. And I don't need any upstart to tell me how I vote and not vote.
Excuse me, Alderman
I'm not apologising. Throw me out.
No,
I don't need any upstart to tell me what to do and what not to do.
I'm finding your language and approach...
Good.
No,
Code of conduct, please. Thank you.
No, I'd ask you to
withdraw
that.
Not withdrawing. Right to the Director of Local Government. Lord Mayor, I'm not withdrawing.
It is not fair.
No, I'm not going to be preached to by anybody.
I think calling people names...
I didn't call a name. Little upstart. That's what it is. Report me to the Director of Local Government.
Alderman Zuko, you're disrupting this meeting and you're behaving badly.
Good.
So can I ask you...
Lord Mayor.
Sorry, behaviour wasn't there. Excuse me, could you sit down, Councillor Kelly?
Sorry, Lord Mayor. Sorry.
I want to describe...
I took it personally, Lord Mayor. I'm sorry.
Deputy Alderman Zuko, could I ask that you please stop disrupting the meeting?
I'll sit here, be quiet. Thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Lord Mayor
Thank you. So it was just a point of clarification. I'm not trying to dictate. Sorry, not trying to dictate.
Okay, Councillor Posselt, you were next.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. Just to bring the mood around in the room, I'm really thrilled to be appointed to the Planning Committee. I have missed, I think, one planning meeting since I've been elected, and I've really enjoyed the process of being involved in deliberating on planning decisions. It's a really tricky space because of the articulation between the community's wants and needs and sentiment and the function as a planning authority. It's really delicate, and I actually quite enjoy that delicacy. It's like a sweet treat. But I'm really happy to be there, and I look forward, as many around this table know, I've spoken to Yimby Hobart's launch party, and I continue to be a strong advocate for the missing middle, medium density development in our city in appropriate corridors, and I believe that those developments are what will ensure a future for many Hobartians, both facing homelessness but also facing removal from their communities because they can no longer afford to buy or rent within their community, and that particularly affects young people and those that are not established. So I'm really excited to be on the committee, and I look forward to serving with my colleagues, who I'm sure we'll discuss in detail and in depth each item as they come before us. And let's get on and build a really great city, encourage development in this city without debate, and critically analyse some of the information that's brought before that committee and how it does articulate with the Planning Authority and the Act versus the council and the city's expectations of what we should be doing there. So I'll see the six of you on committee. I look forward to it, and I look forward to perhaps even a nice social dinner with staff afterwards.
Can I just ask, Councillor Kelly, just one moment. I just need to ask a point of clarification for the CEO. Is the expectation that only 7 elected members attend the Planning Authority Committee, and can you just remind elected members about their rights and, I guess, potential involvement in this committee?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So I did sort of allude to the fact, and we've had quite a bit of discussion around this. So it is certainly welcome. All elected members are welcome, and certainly intended that they would continue to serve on the committee, or the Planning Authority Committee rather. And so the way it is structured through appointed members and nominee members is to be able to provide a more flexible operating environment, specifically relating to the quorum, because we have had difficulties in terms of being able to meet that at times, and it's around just providing maximum flexibility. So certainly the intent is that any elected member of the City of Hobart is certainly welcome and certainly expected to be part of that committee, whether they're an appointed member or otherwise.
Okay, further discussion? Councillor
Lord
Dutton.
Mayor, I have a question that needs a bit of a clarification. So is the planning meeting not open to public where they can't have representation? Is that what will happen?
I think that was asked in the negative, but is it? You're asking, is the Planning Committee open to the public?
Yeah.
And representations?
Thank you.
The answer is yes, I think.
Correct. There's no change.
Thank you. I just want to make two very simple points. Firstly, point number one, it's the context in which we're debating this. There is really no need for us to have this, but you and I know that there have been meetings when we have had to postpone the meeting or not have the meeting because of quorum. That's a fact. And no one can debate that. Fact number one. Fact number two, we then in our workshop said, now what is the best way for us to deal with this? And all of us in the workshop decided, okay, the way to go is to reduce the quorum. We then sought legal advice, and the legal advice was given to us. That legal advice formulated this particular motion on the basis of that advice. Now, we came here with that background, with that context, with an understanding. And I, for one, I have said to others, and I'll say it again, I don't want to be the chair of planning. I'm quite happy if someone else wants to take it. But if there's no one else, then I have been elected to contribute, and it is my contribution. I don't have to be told by any elected member, but this is me. I put my hand up to be elected to say, I will attend the meetings. I will do this for the community. And I've been on a number of committees. Even though when I had my business and I worked 7 days a week, I came to every meeting that I could attend. So all what I'm saying is that I was elected to come on the council, to be on these committees, to make my contribution, and that is what I'm doing. If others decide otherwise, that's their call. And the final point that I want to make, number 2, is this, that the structure of the planning committee, in my understanding, has not changed. So therefore, the members of public will be able to come and represent. And if they're able to do that, and that opportunity, that structure is still the same, then I don't see reasons why that we are comparing this to be the same as a portfolio committee, because that is a different structure. This structure has maintained the same, in my view. Thank you.
Further discussion?
Yeah, I've got some questions through you to the CEO, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, first question is, how many elected members is there in the council?
12.
12. And if I said to you, all of us, would that refer to 12?
Yes.
And if I asked you the question, if I was in a workshop and not all the elected members agreed to what was being discussed in that workshop, would that mean all of us? At a workshop.
Yeah.
There's 12 elected members on this council.
Yes.
If at a workshop, at that workshop, all of the elected members didn't necessarily agree with the discussion on a particular matter,
yeah,
would that be determined as all of us?
Well, no.
Thank you. Wasn't all of us.
That's the point.
It wasn't all of us.
It wasn't the point.
It wasn't all of us.
Were Councillor Sherlock's comments about her being disappointed for those who didn't stand or nominate for the planning committee appropriate? Yes or no?
Excuse me. He just told me to grow up.
No, no, no.
He just told me to grow up.
Excuse me.
And I told him to grow up himself.
Okay.
No, no. Did you use the swear word?
I said grow up yourself.
No,
I'm going
did you use the swear word?
I said you told me to grow up, and I told you to grow up yourself.
No, you
Please,
said...
no, please both sit down. Both sit down. I'm going to have to
You're the one that came close to me. I'm sitting here.
Zuko,
Lord Mayor, check the cameras.
everybody, please calm down. I'm not going to continue this meeting with this kind of behaviour from everybody.
Thank you.
Councillor Dutta, please. Okay. Councillor Kelly, now before you begin, it's not appropriate to ask questions of me about Councillor Sherlock. I made a ruling on a point of order, and my ruling is
That's a different question. It's a different question. I want to know for the next batch of questions that are coming up for other nominations and all that, just so I know whether it's appropriate for me to express my total disappointment and publicly humiliate and shame those who don't nominate for whatever reason is not known to me. Is that acceptable, and is it's okay for me to do?
I think what the point...
Is that yes or no?
Councillor Kelly, this isn't... asking me those questions is not appropriate, and I'm not going to answer them. I made a ruling on a point of order about what Councillor Sherlock said, and between Councillor Zuko calling her a particular name that I thought was inappropriate.
I feel humiliated. I feel publicly vilified and shamed by the disgraceful comments made by one of our supposed leaders, a Deputy Lord Mayor. Here she is tonight, naming and shaming those. She has no reason no reason whatsoever to say those comments. She doesn't know my personal situations. You know.
I'm just going to adjourn the meeting briefly because we've got elected members there. We've got elected members.
Why? Someone's disgraceful behaviour has brought this meeting to its knees. Well done, Deputy Lord Mayor. Shame on you. Shame.
Councillor Kelly, that is inappropriate.
It's inappropriate for what she said.
No, it was an opinion, and it was.
Well, that's my opinion then too.
No, because you were directing it to her.
I'll read the room, Lord Mayor. Read the room.
Excuse me. Now I'm finding your behaviour.
Well, I find this offensive to be involved in.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes and ask everyone to just take a breather and. Number 2, are there any further discussion on the decision 2, which we now have 7 elected members who've been nominated, and we have a chairperson who's been nominated, Councillor Elliott.
I'm only saying this, I was going to keep my thoughts to myself, but Councillor Sherlock wanted to know why I didn't nominate. Number 1 reason, because we can attend and vote, and that's really important. So when I need to, I will come be at planning. I can't make every meeting, so I can't commit to that. But also another primary reason is, to be frank, I need to minimise my contact with the 7 of you. I cannot be around nastiness, the patronisation, the condescending, the elitist attitude, so morally superior.
Can I stop you for a moment?
I'm not talking about individuals, no.
I think
no, I can't be around hypocrites.
Negatively on.
I'm allowed
people
to
who are
say negative
identifiable.
things. I can't be
You're getting
around.
Quite personal. So can I just ask?
I can't be around nastiness, patronisation, condescending, elitist moral superiority, and hypocritical and mob behaviour and bullies.
Point of order. I don't think that this council is in a fit state to continue. I think
that's not a point of order.
Thank you, Councillor Elliott. I think
not a point of order.
It isn't, but
you need to sit down.
No.
It's not a point of order.
Councillor Elliott, please. I am the chair of this meeting. Councillor Posselt, could you please sit down?
Contrary to the Act, again, I'd ask for legal advice. I think that the way...
It's my decision, and that is not a point of order to say that the meeting can't go on.
The meeting procedures are currently being unable to be followed, which is contrary to the Act. That the meeting procedures
are being followed.
People are not listening to the chair. That's not following the...
That is, some are, some aren't as well as they should be. I agree. But I don't think I'm going to make a point of order. I'm asking Councillor Elliott to please refrain from using such emotive language about your colleagues, your 7 colleagues that you've identified. The language is quite emotional, the way you're describing, and you're making accusations that are quite personal about people. I don't think that's appropriate for the chamber, and I ask that you please finish your 5 minutes focusing on what you were going to say about the governance structure, please.
I'm talking about the type of behaviour I cannot be around. And some people might be finding that offensive, but I also found Councillor Sherlock's statements offensive. And as I said, the only reason I've stood up is because Councillor Sherlock wanted to know, and I've given my honest answer. I cannot be around the type of behaviour that especially comes out of some people here. No, I need to minimise it. It's damaging. I've copped so much from this lot for nearly 2 years, and it's just horrible. I'm sick to death of it.
Okay. Any further discussion on this matter? Councillor Lohberger.
I wanted to say briefly that I nominated for the Planning Committee because I think that's what's expected of all of us, that we will go to planning and that we will come to these meetings. I did it because I think that's what my voters expect of me, and I think that's what the voters generally expect of the members of this room. But I will note the point that just because these members haven't nominated to be one of the 7 doesn't mean they won't attend. They likely still will. And I think we should all move on from that. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put Councillor Kelly.
I'm going to state my reasons why I'm not standing on the Planning Committee, the not substantive planning.
I think you've already spoken, Councillor.
No, I didn't give a reason why. I made a comment.
You only get to speak once, but I will I'll give you a couple of moments if you.
Of anyone in this chamber, I have attended more meetings and workshops than anyone in this chamber. I think I've missed 1 planning meeting. I've never missed a council meeting, and I intend to nominate for other committee meetings, committee positions. Therefore, bearing in mind that knowing that I can still attend all these other planning meetings, which I hope to attend most, if not all, that's the reason why I was able to consider my options to be on other committees. So that is the reason why I didn't nominate officially for the substantive 7 position, or whatever you want to call it. As I say, and I intend to, or I hope to, and unless, if the situation continues to be so toxic, I, like Councillor Elliott, will find it very hard to be in the presence of the Deputy Lord Mayor moving forward, but I'll have to consider that as I move forward.
Okay, I'm going to put the motion...
Sorry, I do have a question. When we were first elected, it was pointed out to us that we had a duty to attend the planning meetings, and in fact they were all our attendance is recorded and made public to do so. With this new structure, how does it work now? Is it just for those who nominate, or is it still for all of us? I would really like to understand that a little bit more, please.
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So look, it is for all of you to be able to freely attend. The appointed member and the nominee member split is about being able to provide a workable quorum, given the difficulties that all councils experience, mind you, but we've had difficulties. So There is flexibility in how. So if you attend the meeting, you will be appointed to the committee. If you don't attend the committee, you would be removed from the committee for that meeting. So the fact is, that's how it will be recorded. So.
But my question was that there was an expectation that all of us attend all of the planning and that would be recorded on public note. Yeah. So is that still continuing exactly the same is my question. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to put that motion, that second part of the decision 2. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no.
No.
Show of hands, all those in favour.
Councillor Dutta, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Kitsos, Lohberger, Councillor Harvey, the Deputy and the Mayor.
Against?
Councillor Elliott, Councillor Coates, Alderman Bloomfield, Councillor Kelly. That is carried.
Moving on to item 15, which is the 23-24 Capital Works Program report as at 30th of June 2024. Detailed report attached. Recommendation to receive a note. Moved by Councillor Lohberger, seconded by Councillor Kitsos. Any discussion? Councillor Posselt.
Brief question relating to capital works expenditure that has caused some consternation in the community. I was just wondering if officers have investigated any ways to increase the speed at which the guardrail on Kunani, which is listed in the capital works budget has been complete, to increase the tarnish rate on that. There are methods that you can use for certain metal types. I don't know if that can be applied to this particular guardrail, but there is a lot of upset about the level of reflection that is being caused from the new guardrail, and I was wondering if officers have investigated.
Well, I can, in the sense that there was initial. I haven't received anything in more recent times about the guardrail. Certainly, there was some initial consternation that was expressed mostly through social media. I'm not sure how much direct feedback officers actually had with respect to it. Clearly, over time, it will age, but we can certainly look at it, cognizant of the concerns that have been raised, if there are still concerns being raised. So, definitely.
Thank you. Further discussion? No further discussion. I'll put that. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously.
We missed the mover and seconder for that. Sorry, I was talking to Wes. So.
Councillor Lohberger.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay, we're moving on to item 16, which is receiving and noting the question without notice. Moved by Councillor Lohberger, second by Councillor Posselt. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. Item 17 is questions without notice. Has anyone got any questions? Councillor Elliott.
The 2023 advocacy priorities were approved by Council, but why did the 2024 advocacy priorities not come to Council before the trip to Canberra?
CEO.
Yeah, so, as I understand it, the Council's process is to basically, we've got an advocacy framework that was improved by the Council. So the direction given to me upon starting here was that we are to make sure that our advocacy priorities accord to that document, and that is what's framing those documents that were presented to Canberra and others since in the last month or so.
Is it an ongoing situation that the advocacy priorities won't come to Council for approval?
No. So what we have, obviously, with respect to obviously some concerns that have been raised by some elected members, we will be bringing it to the next council meeting. But to be clear, staff have been operating under the and with the understanding that the advocacy framework was guiding the priorities that the council sought to prioritise with local and or state and federal elected members or others, and so if there's a change to that, we're certainly happy to work with that, and so we'll ensure that it comes back so that everyone gets a chance to vote on it.
Thanks, that's great. And this one's related to the enterprise agreement negotiations that we got the update on recently. Does the administration think it's fair for an employee who has been diagnosed with breast cancer to have access to 13 days paid personal leave, but a male employee who wants breast implants can get 20 days paid gender affirmation leave plus the 13 days personal leave, which is more than double that of paid leave entitlement of the breast cancer employee? Is that fair?
I'll take that one on notice.
Thank you. And late last year, the Council wrote to the Prime Minister about the war in Gaza, but the war's still continuing. Have we received a reply from the Prime Minister, as I'm worried they didn't get our letter?
I think a reply was received and it was circulated or put on the elected member bulletin, but it can be recirculated, I think.
I was just wondering because the war's still going, but we wrote about it, so I was confused.
Okay. Can I just ask a question, actually? Just following up on the advocacy priorities. Did those advocacy priorities, were they the subject of workshops with elected members? And if so, was it 1 or 2 workshops? And was there a sort of collective effort into that priorities document?
Thanks, Lord Mayor. So there was an elected member workshop in June this year, and then there was a planning day in July.
And so at both of those meetings, these advocacy priorities were identified by the group?
They were discussed, and the clear direction was to get on with it.
All right. Any other questions? No. Item 18. Sorry, so that's... yes, Councillor Coates.
Sorry. My question actually relates to the Transport Strategy 2024 that we passed back in July. And in the discussion about that motion at the time, I did ask in regards to how this is going to be operationalised, what reporting is going to be in place. And I was told, and it was noted in item 5 under the action on ongoing reporting will be undertaken, an internal steering group established. So my questions are, has a steering group been established? What ongoing reporting has been put in place in regards to the management of that plan? And thirdly, that plan identified a whole series of actions to be undertaken immediately. Immediately can be read multiple ways. It has been 2 months. And I guess I would also seek an update as to what of those immediate actions have been done, undertaken, started, etc. Thank you.
Okay, moving on to item 18, which if someone could just receive and note the questions raised during debate. Moved by Councillor Posselt, seconded by Councillor Harvey. All those in favour say aye. Against say no. Carried unanimously. I'd now like someone to move a motion to move into the closed portion of the meeting.
Moved.
Councillor Harvey, seconded by Councillor Lohberger. All those